About 4 months ago, I made a video on Until Then, a beautiful 2D story game that centers around adolescent life, loss, and grief, while displaying what life is like in the Philippines. The video focused on Catherine Portillo, the best friend to the main character, telling her story and how much it impacted my own life during a time when I really needed it. It was a video that I spent so much time, effort, and genuine love into because of how much her story connected with my own. And when I first uploaded the video, I was gonna be content no matter the view count, as this was a video done out of pure love for a series that changed my life for the better. I poured my heart and soul into this project, and in the end, you guys ended up getting the video to well over 130,000 views at the time of writing this script. So many of you shared your own stories in the comments, and it made me so happy that my video not only helped bring attention to Until Then, but it also gave people a space to bare their souls. So thank you all for the positivity, emotional comments, and support. It means the world to me. But with the large amount of popularity and attention the video got, the question remained, would I be making a follow-up video? Well, although I hadn't finished Until Then at the time, I was planning on making a follow-up video about my favorite relationship within the game, but before I did, I noticed quite a few comments telling me to finish the game before I made a follow-up video, as during my creation of the Kathy video, I had only played the first act out of 3. And I know it sounds stupid, but I was initially gonna make another video without playing the rest of the game. Yeah, that sounds pretty crazy, but I'll explain my reasoning later on. But yeah, I realized how dumb it would be for me to make a video without knowing the entire story of a game, and decided to boot it up and play the rest of it in one night. Going into it, I kept thinking, the first act already hit me incredibly hard in the feels. How are they gonna top that? I said that the ending of the first act had me crying, but the other 2 acts, I have never ugly cried at a video game before Until Then. If Act 1 was a knife to the heart, Acts 2 and 3 would be like a missile. That game tore me to shreds emotionally, and after I finished the game, I did not get sleep that night. I kept thinking to myself, why did this game hurt me as much as it did? Why did it make me bawl my eyes out? And that's when I realized how different it was to all the other games I've played. Despite its supernatural elements, Until Then was one of the most human games I've ever played. And what made the game so human was how Until Then portrayed love. I can confidently say that Until Then as a whole is not only one of the best stories I've ever played, but it's also, in my opinion, one of the best love stories in a video game I've ever seen. Until Then and the way it portrays love has impacted my life immensely and was another breath of fresh air for me that I greatly needed during that time of my life. Through its character relationships, its portrayal of grief and overall story, today, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be going over why Until Then is the greatest love story ever told in a video game. I kid you not, this game actually changed the way I view love. Now, much like the first video, I'll be going heavy into spoilers, so please, like I've said so many times before, play Until Then. It's my favorite video game of all time and deserves so much more love. It's not just an emotional game to me, it's one of the only games that genuinely changed my life. I can pour my heart out into my writing and voice work, but nothing will ever beat you experiencing the game for yourself. Also, you don't have to watch my first video to understand what's going on in this one, but if you haven't, please watch that video. I'll also admittedly be recapping a lot of what happened in the game. I know the way I recapped a lot of the plot was a point of criticism from people in my last video, and I completely understand it. If people listen to me talk about the plot to a game they've already played, I'd understand if that'd be boring. But because the topic of my video today is love, I want you all to understand how much this game means to me, and in my mind, it's difficult to emphasize the love within Until Then without talking about the details in the story. This isn't just a video on how the game masterfully portrays love, it's also a video on my own love and what Until Then has done for me. And I don't think a basic and broad recap is enough to emphasize my love for this game. Now, to make sure this isn't just a recap video, I'll do my best to give my own analysis about the scenes I talk about, so you Until Then veterans don't get bored. Now, without further ado, let's get into the game whose story both ruined and changed my life, for the better. Now, when looking into what makes Until Then such a good love story, we'll have to look at one of, if not the best relationship in the entire game. These two goobers. Mark Borja and Nicole Laksamana are two high school students, acting as the main protagonists of Until Then, and holy crap, these two have one of the best friendships and romances I've ever seen come out of a video game. Mark Borja, born February 7, 1999, is a 15-year-old Filipino boy who lives alone in Bonifacio City, the fictional stand-in for the real-world's Quezon City in the Philippines, with both of his parents, Paulo and Maria Borja, working abroad in order to provide for him and give Mark a better life. From the first few minutes of the game, we can see Mark is a lazy, unmotivated, and seemingly depressed young man who spends most of his time pulling all-nighters playing video games, doom scrolling, and putting off his homework. And when he is forced to do work, he tends to put the bare minimum amount of effort into doing it. We can even see Mark's unfolded clothes and trash throughout his house, an obvious display of how little he does from day to day. The only thing that he seems to do besides play video games all day is practice the piano, something he's not exactly amazing at. Despite how lazy and unmotivated he is, Mark is actually a really smart and capable kid. Being able to do things like create a slideshow and present on it effectively in an incredibly short amount of time, getting passing grades in almost all of his classes despite hardly ever studying, and he actually gets along with people really easily as well. He has two best friends and he seems to get along with everyone in his class decently well. In fact, throughout the game, as Mark meets new people, he befriends them quite quickly. And despite being incredibly unmotivated in his studies, he's genuinely trying to improve at playing piano, practicing whenever he can. So Mark is charismatic, intelligent, has a good relationship with his friends and the people around him, and he wants to improve at the piano. He has all these things going for him, so why is he so unmotivated? Why doesn't he care? Well, before we get into that, let's go over the second half of this amazing relationship. Nicole Laksamana, born February 14, 1999, is a 15-year-old girl who left her original hometown, Purok Pag-asa, after it was destroyed during the events of the Ruling, a continuous series of natural disasters that destroyed many parts of the world, with Nicole and her family eventually settling in Liamson City and beginning her life anew. Nicole seems to be the exact opposite of Mark, hardworking, passionate, and seemingly happy. Now, from the general information I've given, it seems like these two have a simple opposites attract love story, but believe me, it gets better. Way better, the more the story goes on. After successfully completing another assignment at the very last minute, Mark and his best friend Kathy meet up at a legally distinct 7-Eleven to try and dig up information on the new transfer students coming to their school. After scrolling through social media, they eventually come across the profiles of one of these transfers, that being Nicole Laksamana's. After seeing photos of Nicole, Mark can't help but feel like he's met her before. In fact, he feels like he's known her for a long time. He then wonders if this feeling of familiarity was similar to that of his class president, project partner, and friend Luis Orduña, who, along with several other people, had been feeling accounts of deja vu, memories that seemed so real but weren't. As he stares at Nicole's photos, he doesn't notice Kath repeatedly calling out his name, too focused on these feelings of familiarity to notice her, which I didn't catch it at first, was pretty damn good foreshadowing of what's to come. Anyways, after this, Mark doesn't run into Nicole until he has to get another assignment done in the nick of time yet again. And by run into, I mean he literally ran straight into her. Nothing says true love like giving each other a concussion. After both of them recover from this brain injury-inducing introduction, Mark gets the feeling of familiarity from her once again. But those feelings are pushed down as both of them believe that the other was at fault for this head-on collision, with Mark arguing that Nicole shouldn't have been standing right smack in the middle of the hall while working on her art project, while Nicole claims that Mark shouldn't have been running in the halls in the first place. This cranium connection results in the two of them being sent to the principal's office, and while the two of them wait, Nicole gives Mark the cold shoulder, with Mark trying continuously to get her to talk to him, trying to show her various things around the office to impress her. Honestly, during my first playthrough, I thought Mark's constant attempts to try to get Nicole to talk to him were pretty strange. Before this, we see him talk to another quiet student who doesn't respond to him, and during that interaction, he's nervous as hell. But with Nicole, Mark acts confident and relaxed, a lot more talkative than he is even with his close friends. I know he feels bad for ruining her first day at a new school, but still, it's strange how casual he is about all of it, like he's at ease. He's also corny as hell around her too, but being corny is awesome. And hey, as Mark goes about the office trying to show off, Nicole's icy exterior slowly starts to show a couple of cracks. Look at her trying to hold in a smile. Anyways, after waiting for almost an hour, it isn't until the topic of who was at fault for their crash that Mark and Nicole finally start talking to one another. But as the two of them bicker, it's quite obvious that they're just being playful with each other, and the more they argue, the more they seem to be getting into it. Like, genuinely, when I was watching this scene, I felt like I was interrupting something. Once they meet with the principal, she threatens to call Nicole's parents, prompting Mark to get serious and offers to help Nicole with her art project and pay for everything damaged, to which Nicole accepts. As the two begin to work on their art pieces in Nicole's new home, she sits at her living room table, basking in a bright, warm light, with Mark sitting across from her in the darker side of the room, covered in shadows, symbolizing not only their contrasting enthusiasm to work on this project, but their outlooks on life as well. While they work, Nicole learns how little Mark truly cares about academics and schoolwork, learning how often he goes to the principal's office, questioning his lack of fear at the consequences. As the piano plays slowly in the background, Nicole asks Mark why he chooses to live life the way he does, putting the bare minimum into his assignments, questioning if he even finds enjoyment living the way he does, with Mark brushing her off. After dismissing her question, Nicole takes Mark's low-effort painting, the piano in the background swelling as she gets her hands on it, bringing it into the light that she basks in, beginning to add new colors, applying different strokes and envisioning something new, much to his annoyance. But as he watches her work, putting her imagination, passion, and effort into his piece, he can't help but admit that he sees her vision. Nicole then tells him that she enjoys the things she does, and when she has that enjoyment in her heart, the effort and the hard work come naturally as she shines. As Mark watches her paint, his eyes dart away from her art piece, watching her face as she works. He saw her determined look, the effort she was putting into her paint strokes, and as she smiles at him, he can't deny that she most definitely shines. As Nicole and Mark smile at each other, she tells him that all he needs to do is just find his spark. But their warm and comforting moment is cut short when Mark envisions a flash of an airplane, followed by the flash of a woman playing the piano, causing his smile to fall. After that reminder, he insists that Nicole take his modified art piece and turn it in as her own, since she basically did all the work for him, with him drawing 3 lines, 2 vertical and 1 horizontal as his own piece. And after looking down and seeing Mark's piece, her face falls and she agrees to take credit for what she made, saying that it was hers. After that, she begins questioning Mark about his family, learning that he lives alone, with his parents working overseas. One question about what they do for a living, however, Mark changes the subject, asking to use the bathroom. As he searches her house for the bathroom, Mark comes across a room with a piano, finding all of Nicole's old notes, her awards, and a photo of her, her parents, and someone else, with the face of whoever it was being cracked and missing. He then finds another photo with the face of the person fully intact, a young boy with long hair and darker skin. As he sits at this piano and begins to play, Nicole barges into the room, enraged that he went somewhere he shouldn't have and demands that he leaves. But before she can kick him out, her mother appears, asking Mark to stay for dinner, which he accepts, much to Nicole's annoyance. But as the dinner goes on, the two and Nicole's parents seem to be enjoying themselves, with Mark looking the happiest he's ever been in the game thus far, with him eventually leaving and going back home. After dinner with Nicole's family, time skips a few days and we land on Mark eating dinner all alone at home. The contrast between him and Nicole's homes being incredibly noticeable, showing how different their living conditions are. While Nicole's house was full of bright, warm colors even late at night, Mark's home is dark with cold colors. Despite not being fully moved in, Nicole's house is full of trinkets and family photos, with Mark's home having little to none. And during the dinner scene with Mark and Nicole's family, a portrait of 4 horses can be seen in the background, galloping together. But in Mark's home, there's a painting of a lone horse staring at its reflection in the river, with 2 horses up in the cliffs far away. It shows the environment Mark lives in every day, making his aloofness and depression understandable. Despite how casual he is about everything, he really does miss his parents. After he finishes his food, Mark watches TV, plays video games, talks to random strangers online, and practices piano. While talking to strangers online, however, he comes across an anonymous person who told him about how after reaching their dreams, they one day just woke up with no drive to reach new heights, unable to enjoy new hobbies, and feeling like talking to their friends about their problems would just burden them, feeling stuck in an endless void, to which Mark told him that he didn't understand. The anonymous person told him that it was okay that he didn't understand, they were just happy someone listened, and that maybe it's impossible for understanding to be sought after when feeling lost. After this long chat, Mark lies in his bed and thinks about his life and where he is now. He wishes to be able to experience things for the first time again, thinking back to his childhood and his mother, Maria Borja's, piano playing. He thinks to himself that he believes he's felt all that he could possibly ever feel, picturing the moment when his parents left to work abroad, with him going about the motions of life until it wore him down to the bone. He feels like there's nothing left for him to possibly wait for, to look forward to. But as he thinks back to his dinner alone, despite the darkness surrounding him, there was still some light shining through. The portrait of the lone horse by the river staring at itself in the water, symbolizing his self-reflection into his own psyche. And as he rolls over in bed, he thinks of Nicole, the way her eyes shine so brightly after working on her art piece. How happy he was eating dinner with her and her family, thinking to himself that maybe, just maybe, with her, he can feel alive again. From what we've seen between Mark and Nicole thus far, it's clear that Nicole's meeting with Mark has set him on the path of trying to live again. The love he saw between her and her family was something he hadn't experienced in such a long time. The love and enjoyment she shows in her work, to find her spark and passion in it, clearly inspired him. But despite how much Nicole's done for Mark already, you might be asking, what will Mark do for Nicole? Is this just a story about how a girl's love fixed and inspired a boy? Well, to answer that, let's keep going. Before we keep talking about Nicole and Mark, it's important to preface that while these two are spending time with each other, Luis Orduña, Mark's class president, is beginning research on the feelings of deja vu people are experiencing around the world. The same deja vu Mark felt when he first met Nicole. With Louise asking Mark to meet with her at the hospital to discuss it further as she was accompanying her best friend Sofia Rubio to visit her grandmother, as Sofia's grandmother was a victim of the ruling. As Mark and Louise chat about her research on these feelings of deja vu, he spots a mother holding her sick son, begging the hospital for treatment as they were victims of the ruling. Next to them, a young boy was running around in circles while playing with a toy airplane. As the boy falls over and the airplane crashes to the floor, Mark stands up quickly, his mind becoming clouded and disoriented. As he tries to get back to the hospital rooms, visions of ruins fill his mind, the walls covered in bloody messages talking about the ruling scattered across the walls. And as he reaches the hospital room, he sees a vision of Sofia's grandmother walking towards him, repeating the same sentence over and over. "This is your fault." It isn't until he gets a message from his best friend Kathy that Mark snaps out of his hallucination, asking him when he was gonna get to the fair, as she and her friends had planned to go today, prompting Mark to leave. As he, Kathy, and their third best friend Rydell Gonzalez try to enjoy themselves at the fair, Mark can't stop seeing the empty and destroyed hospital and the words "this is your fault" everywhere he looks, prompting him to take a walk, leaving Kathy all by herself after Rydell leaves as well. As Mark walks around the fairgrounds, his head throbbing and his hands shaking violently, he comes across a familiar face trying to win a prize at darts. As Mark steps over, the blurriness and pounding in his ears fades as a beautiful piano begins to play. Mark offers to win a prize for her, and being at Nicole's side, the stress and the hallucinations all seem to dissipate, resulting in Mark winning her a prize. After spending some time at the fair together, they both decide to ride the Ferris wheel. A ride Mark initially swore to never go on due to its instability. Love makes a person brave, I guess. When Mark expressed his fears about going on the Ferris wheel, telling Nicole that anything could happen, she soothes him, asking if he's ever been afraid of being struck by lightning when walking outside or getting hit by a car when crossing the road, essentially telling him that you can't focus on the what-ifs and he needs to keep going regardless of what could possibly happen. As the two talk about their fears and a shared love of video games on the Ferris wheel, Mark apologizes for snooping around her house, explaining how the piano was his mother's hobby and that he just wanted to follow in her footsteps. He then tells her how he's been living without his parents for 3 years now, with his mother being a domestic worker and his dad being an electrician. This prompts Nicole to open up about how her family went through hard times as well, being victims of the ruling, and that now she was just happy with living once again. When Mark asks her why she didn't tell him before, she responds how she and her family just wanted to leave the past behind them and start anew. But despite wanting to start anew, she tells him that when she sees someone hurting or suffering, it takes away a part of her. As the two continue talking and laughing together, it's clear how much the two of them have bonded over this short period of time, with the two of them being lost in their own little world together. The happiest I think we've seen Mark the entire game. In fact, Nicole's passion and love for life inspired Mark enough to the point where he decided to join the piano club at their school in order to improve and follow in the footsteps of his mother. As he arrives at the club meeting and mingles with his fellow members, Mark begins to play an unknown piece that his mother used to play for him when he was younger, asking his peers if they could identify it, with none of them being able to. After he finishes what he can remember, he looks up and finds Nicole standing right in front of him, a distraught look on her face. As he tries to talk to her, she runs away, her eyes filled with tears, prompting Mark to chase after her. As they run across the school halls, Mark grabs her hand, with Nicole staring into his eyes as she tears up. As they talk, Nicole asks where he heard that piano piece from, with Mark responding that he got it from his mother, with him being able to remember it because it was associated with another memory he had in the past. After hearing this, Nicole tells Mark to meet her in the club room after school. When Mark entered the club room, the sky around him was a deep, warm orange as the sun was beginning to set. He finds Nicole already there, standing above the piano, telling him to play what he remembers again. As the two play together, Mark remembers his mother playing the piano for him, the exact same piece the two of them were playing together. As they continue, Mark looks at Nicole with pure adoration, with tears streaming down her face as she plays for the first time in years, with something that she kept deep and emotional inside her finally pouring to the surface, letting it all out onto the keys of the piano. As the piece finally finishes, she tells Mark the name of it. Time is Tearing Us Apart, a piece that she made for her best friend Jake, the boy from the photos in her house. She opens up to Mark about how they were supposed to be friends forever, but one day, he ended up disappearing, never to be seen or heard from again. It was because of his disappearance that Nicole refused to touch a piano ever again, breaking down because he never got to hear the piece she made for him. She sobs in her hands, wishing that she knew why he left her, and after finally letting her tears pour out, she tells Mark that she was ready to begin again, to finally start anew, with Mark telling her that he knows how that feels now. With her soul cleansed, she finally agrees to teach Mark and help him achieve his goal of becoming an expert piano player. This was the exact moment that I knew Mark and Nicole's relationship was going to be special. I initially started out believing Nicole was just gonna help Mark live again, but when Nicole joined Mark in order to play the piano, their duet made me realize that in reality, in order to live again, the two of them needed each other. They both have what the other doesn't. Mark had been living alone for 3 years, and although he had 2 best friends, he couldn't help but feel like there was nothing left to live for. It wasn't until he was greeted by the warmth of Nicole and her family that he wanted to find his own spark, to find his own reason to live. Nicole is a person who, although had a loving family, lost her closest friend and home, unable to feel like she can truly start her life again because of what she lost, stopping herself from doing what she loved due to the memories associated with it. It wasn't until she met Mark, someone she can call a friend, that she was able to play through it and finally begin her life anew. Because they met each other, Mark and Nicole found the ability to live and love again, free from their baggage. Well, not exactly. As the two train tirelessly at piano together, Nicole makes it clear that although she's fine with teaching Mark, she doesn't actually want to apply for the club. When asked why, Nicole tells Mark that although she does feel like she's beginning anew by teaching him, she just can't seem to find that spark. After hearing this, Mark takes Nicole up to the roof, the night sky shining above with the glow of the city lights and ambience surrounding them. As they sit together, Mark tells her about how he doesn't see his best friends that much anymore, with them all being busy in some way. And although he is bummed out that he isn't hanging out with them as much anymore, he respects that they're out chasing opportunities, and hanging out with her in the piano club has made him really happy. Mark tells her that he likes being around her, he likes spending time with her and his fellow club members. And although she hasn't had an easy life, he sees her fighting every single day and that he's proud of her, with him not wanting her to think that she's only doing this for him. As Nicole's eyes fill with tears, a massive blush spreading across her face, she wraps him in a warm hug, thanking him for his kind words, finally deciding to join the club. And as the two sit on the roof, Nicole leans her head against Mark, as these two aren't just taking in the sights of the city, they're taking in their lives as they begin anew. As Nicole leans against Mark's shoulders, she looks at him, the girl who suffered so much in the past year because of the ruling, fearing that the world was about to end. She tells him that she's glad that the world hasn't ended yet. What I love most about this scene isn't just the fact that this is the first time Mark has ever expressed his genuine feelings of affection towards Nicole, but it's also the implications of why Mark brought Nicole to the rooftop. It could be because he wanted to show Nicole that he relates to the feeling of having your best friends drift away. He could also be implying that because he and his best friends used to come to the rooftop all the time, and now that Mark and Nicole were there together, he now considered her one of his best friends. Whatever the reason, this is one of the sweetest scenes between the two, and the part where it was clear that Mark and Nicole's love for one another was something special. As Mark continues to practice piano with Nicole, his life seems to be taking a turn for the better. He gushes about his love for the piano during his shopping session with Kathy, with her even commenting how nice it is to finally see him so happy. But it seems like Mark's not the only one whose life has improved thanks to someone special. When Mark once again meets up with Louise to discuss the feelings of deja vu, he notices how much Sophia and her boyfriend Mike Aguilar have changed her. With her going from a serious, no-nonsense girl who only focuses on her studies to a happy, still studious young lady who plays video games and spends time with the people close to her. It's nice to see that finding love from the right person isn't just something exclusive to our main character. Fast forward to Christmas, where although Mark's life has been on the up and up, things are still pretty lonely back at home. All around him, he sees friends walking around the streets, he sees a family all together for the holidays in their highly decorated house, and as he scrolls through his social media, all of his friends seem to be enjoying themselves for the holidays, with Kathy and Rydell being busy for the holidays as well. Things seem to get even more gloomy as Mark gets a message from his father telling him that he and his mother couldn't make it back for the holidays because of work, prompting Mark to enter his parents' old room, thinking back to the last Christmas he had with his family, a time when he was happy. As Mark stands there in thought, he gets a knock at the door, and as he goes outside, he finds Nicole and her family, inviting Mark to join them for Christmas. I adore how embarrassed Nicole looks throughout their entire invitation, with her looking annoyed when her mom told Mark that it was Nicole's idea to invite him over. After heading to her house, we can once again see how different Mark and Nicole's home lives are. The dark, gloomy Borja household, barren of any kind of Christmas decor around the house, contrasts so much with the warm and bright Laksamana household, filled to the brim with Christmas cheer. As Mark looks around their fully furnished house, with the piano finally being moved into the living room instead of being hidden away, it's clear that Nicole and her family have finally gotten the fresh start that they wanted. As Mark, Nicole, and her parents eat together, I love all the details spread throughout the dinner. We can see Nicole's embarrassment as her parents talk with Mark, definitely fearing that they might embarrass her in some way. We can see Mark's mixture of joy at having an actual family dinner mixed with some reluctance, as it's been years since he actually had a Christmas dinner with family, worried that he was intruding. As Nicole's parents thank Mark for helping Nicole finally play the piano again, I wonder if they know how much they're helping Mark too. I mean, at this point, they should just adopt Mark. Actually, scratch that. Things might end up being weird if that happens. As the dinner progresses, Nicole's parents tell the two that the highways have finally been repaired after the ruling, meaning that if she wanted to go out and do things like visit her grandparents, she could. After hearing this, however, Nicole's happy expression gets serious. Her parents praise her, saying how although the years have been rough for them, she's always been a tough, headstrong girl who brightens the lives of all the people she meets, embarrassing her greatly. They thank her for being so strong throughout it all. After dinner, the two of them sit at the piano, duetting a beautiful piece together. Afterwards, Mark excitedly tells Nicole how well they work together, telling her that they could be partners, the implications of that making them both blush. I don't think I've talked about this enough, but those two are genuinely adorable together. I've been skipping over a lot of their cute little moments, but there are just so many. Just a reminder that you should play the game and see all of them. Anyways, as the two sit down at the piano, they open up to each other more about why they started playing. But while they talk, Mark tells her about how his mom started playing and how work and life caused her to abandon her dreams of becoming a professional pianist, and as he talks, the screen pans to the side of the living room, displaying a multitude of Nicole's family photos. It shows how both Mark and Nicole's family underwent intense hardships, but in the end, although Nicole and her family were able to get through it together, Mark's was separated. He tells Nicole how hard it was for his family financially, how his mother's passion and love for piano was worn down by these struggles. But despite these hardships, his mom never stopped loving the piano, going to recitals and shows where she eventually heard Nicole's piece, which his mom loved so much she ended up playing it for Mark. But although it was a beautiful piece, the reason why Mark remembers it so well becomes apparent. Before, Mark said he remembered the piece because he associated it with something else. That something was Mark's mother finally telling him that she and his father had to leave, to provide for him, sacrificing her dreams of piano to give him the life that he deserves, to follow his own dreams, and despite knowing they left for his sake, he still misses them a lot. And as the two sit together, Nicole tells him that she knows what it's like to miss somebody, with her going over to look at the photo of Jake. As Nicole opens up to Mark about her desire to talk to Jake one last time, Mark sits in the light, with Nicole being shrouded in darkness, the exact opposite of the first time they spent together. It was clear that although Mark was getting happier, his life finally having some light, Nicole was still regretful, still hurting about the loss of her best friend. Telling Mark about all the mischief they got into together and how supportive he was of her dreams. Telling her that she would go far one day. She tells Mark she never thought she'd pick up the piano after Jake left, but then she met him. A boy who was so lazy yet so persistent at the same time. Telling Mark that there was something she had to tell him outside. At this point, me and the friend I was playing this with were losing our minds because come on. They're standing together in a beautifully decorated backyard that's shining in warm light. The piano playing beautifully in the background and the two of them are blushing. I was so prepared for them to kiss. But as the two stand there, Nicole tells Mark that ever since she met him, she feels like she's known him for a long time, confessing that it feels like they were meant to meet. And in any other scenario, this would be extremely romantic, but to Mark, this shocks and scares him, as it proves that Louise was right about these feelings of deja vu, meaning that whatever this memory thing was, it was most definitely a supernatural occurrence. But what does it all mean? The entire Christmas scene was a testament to how much Mark and Nicole have changed each other's lives. It shows how much they've grown as friends and as people. It shows just how much the two have done for one another, with Mark gaining a new family and Nicole finally being able to play piano again. But in the end, despite all their time together, it all ended up feeling unnatural. But why? Well, let's keep going. We open up to Mark practicing piano one last time before his recital, and after his practice, he gets an alert on his phone about one of his classmates, Jessica Bautista, a quiet girl who Mark tried to talk to with that attempt ending in failure. To Mark's surprise, Jessica ended up going missing with nobody knowing what happened to her. It's like she vanished. Having to push that big piece of news to the side, Mark arrives at his piano recital, the event that he and Nicole have spent months training for. But as he waits for his turn on stage, he realizes that Nicole is nowhere to be seen, and as he gets up on stage, he can't seem to find her. But as he raises his fingers to play, Nicole arrives at the nick of time, and with her presence finally in the room, Mark begins to play. His piece of choice being Edvard Grieg's Wedding Day, a piece that was created to celebrate Grieg and his wife's 25-year wedding anniversary, a piece about love, which makes a lot of sense for why Mark decided to choose it. Like I've said many times already, Mark was once a lazy, unmotivated procrastinator, but after finding the right person in his life began to change. He found his spark. He found a reason to live again. This piece was a testament for his love of piano, his love for his mother and her dreams, and most importantly, it was a testament to his love for Nicole and what the two have done for each other. It was the first piece we hear Mark play in the entire game, and hearing how he sounded then versus now is a testament to his growth. After Mark finishes his piece, his friends gather around to congratulate him, with Kathy even telling him the genius he kept locked away in his head for years finally awoke. But as Mark is surrounded by his friends, he notices Nicole sitting away from them all with a sad look on her face. The scene then cuts to them walking together in the halls of the school, with it being revealed that Nicole didn't play during the recital. Mark asks why, after everything she didn't play, but before he could get an answer, he's pulled aside by Luis, who wants to talk to Mark about the deja vu, telling him that Jessica's disappearance could be the last piece of the puzzle for solving these supernatural occurrences. Alright, I'm gonna be real with you guys. This part of the game, the explanations for the supernatural occurrences really confused me during my first playthrough, but they are important and I need to explain them to the best of my abilities. Anyways, Luis explains that everything in the universe has waves or ripples, rippling across space and time, dropping small pellets in a bowl of water to show off these ripples. With these ripples creating the particles that make up everything, the air, the ground, everything in the universe. Anyways, these ripples across the universe meet and collide with one another, which in turn means the particles are interacting with one another, with Luis herself dropping an object on the floor, with the object's particles and the floor's particles interacting, meaning that their ripples interact as well. Things like creating fire, electricity, and that sort of stuff is directly caused by these ripples interacting with one another. Mark questions her theory, claiming that although the ripples within particles does make some sense, how would something like memories be affected? Luis tells Mark that yes, things like memories and hallucinations shouldn't be happening when these particles interact, but they could if something extreme happens. If there happens to be something that produces a ripple that's too strong, it can throw off other ripples instead of just interacting with them, calling it a quantum tsunami, with Luis dropping a rock into the water, with the rock's ripples scattering the pellets and disrupting their rippling. Luis claims that these quantum tsunamis are causing things that shouldn't be interacting with one another to interact, but it could also throw things out of balance to the point where if a particle is caught in a quantum tsunami, the ripples from the tsunami are so powerful that they could cancel out the ripples of another particle, resulting in it vanishing out of existence, as without its rippling, the universe doesn't identify it as real, causing it to vanish. Mark proposes that these quantum tsunamis could be caused by the rain, as the day Jessica went missing was the same day Mark and Kathy went shopping together. He also brings up how Luis's chess opponent Polly went missing the same day Mark and Kathy hung out at the legally distinct 7-Eleven, and it rained. Continuing forward, he points out how the day he saw the hallucinations in the hospital, it was raining outside. Luis takes his hypothesis into consideration, telling him to go talk to Nicole while she continues her research. As Mark meets with Nicole on the roof, she apologizes to him, with Mark responding that all he wants to do is understand. Nicole tells Mark that even though she did end up joining piano club, she knew in her heart that it wasn't going to help her. Not really. Looking down at something in her hands. As they sit in silence for a while, Mark thanks her for everything she's done for him. He tells her that she helped him find direction in his life, how he feels even closer to his mom now by making her dreams his own. Their conversation ends with Mark offering to go with Nicole to visit her grandparents, the people who got her into piano in the first place, to which Nicole accepts. The two getting on the bus the next day. As the two ride the bus, while Nicole sleeps in her seat, Mark expresses annoyance that the bus is only going in a straight line without any turns. Which was confusing. What's the problem with a straight path? Was it just gonna be boring for him or something? Oh. Alright, yeah, that makes sense. As they ride, Mark gets texts from a lot of people, one of those people being Luis's best friend Sophia, who, judging from her texts, is most definitely in a relationship with Mark's best friend Kathy. So everyone's getting a love interest and everyone's happy, except Rydell. He's in love with the filmmaking process, so he's just literally me, I guess. One of these texts ends up being from Luis, who explains to Mark that maybe these disappearances during these quantum tsunamis were because the people vanishing were alone. And because they were all alone, their ripples couldn't interact with anything, causing them to vanish. She then explained how Jessica was all alone the night she disappeared, and her chess opponent Polly was staying at her coach's house, who she visited every day, and the night she vanished, her coach was out of the house. She tells Mark to always have someone with him and to keep each other in sight, that way their particles will always be interacting. As Mark and Nicole look out the window and see the ruins of buildings that were destroyed by the ruling, Nicole describes the hardships and deaths caused by the disasters, the lack of medicine and the places to go, telling him that he could never see the full picture unless he saw it for himself. Mark asks Nicole if Jake was one of these ruling victims, to which Nicole responds that no, he went missing years prior. When Mark asks if he had any siblings or parents, Nicole tenses up, prompting Mark to reassure her that it was okay if she didn't want to answer. As the two reach their stop, they begin a bike to their next destination, and as they race, they reminisce on how far they've come together. From arguing with each other about who was at fault for their concussive first meeting, to best friends who spend most of their time together. After their bike ride, the two come across a broken two-person swing on a cliff that was overlooking the sea. The two stop to rest and both attempt to fix it, with both of them failing, much to the other's amusement. Despite their teasing, the two end up working on fixing it together, and with their teamwork, the two manage to keep it intact. As they sit on the swing and talk about their shared feelings of familiarity, with Nicole taking Mark's hand in hers, I was so ready. This was the perfect moment for the two of them to kiss. Me and my friend on call were waiting in anticipation. And then the swing broke, because of course it did. Anyways, the broken swing didn't deter the duo as they leaned against each other on the ground. As they sit together, Mark tells her that he feels like there's nothing the two of them can't handle if they're together, causing Nicole to get a sad look on her face, telling Mark how much she wants to trust him, how much she wants for him to understand, and as she says this, the cracking of thunder is heard overhead, hinting that rain was about to arrive. And as they sit there, Nicole tells Mark that there's something she wants to show him, taking him to a small, ruined town with a sign out front giving it the name Purok Pagasa. As Nicole walks forward, Mark's back is turned to the bikes they left on the road, questioning if this was the way to her grandparents' house, but as he turns around, she's nowhere to be seen. As he searches around for her, his panic grows as the sound of thunder continues billowing overhead, signifying the rain was coming soon and he was alone. More importantly to him, Nicole was alone. As Mark searches, he finds the ruins of an old house, and when he enters, he finds Nicole standing in it, holding the same piece of paper she was looking at during her conversation with Mark on the roof. As Mark begs for her to leave the house with him, fearing it'll collapse, she looks at Mark, asking him if he truly does understand her, to which he says he does. She then reveals to him that the house they were standing in was Jake's old home. She tells him that she wanted to find something there, anything that would just give her a clue as to what happened to him and where he went. Only to find nothing, just a broken home. Mark asks if going to her grandparents' house was just an excuse to come here, with Nicole telling him that he said he wanted to understand her, he wanted to know what she was going through, so she brought him here. And as they go back and forth, Nicole begins to get angrier, as although Mark keeps telling her that he understands what she's going through, he seems completely oblivious to the intentions of the trip in the first place. Mark then approaches her, telling Nicole that the past doesn't matter now. What matters is that they're together in the present. This sets Nicole off, with her yelling at him that she was trying to open up to him, with Mark getting defensive about it, telling her that she could have just explained to him what happened. As Nicole tells him that she thought he knew, Mark yells back that how could he? Because she never tells him anything. He tells her that they're standing in this abandoned, collapsed building for nothing, essentially telling her that there was nothing here for her and there never will be. This was the last straw for Nicole, as she shoves Mark onto the floor in anger, telling him that of course he can't understand what she's going through because he still had his best friends. He still had plenty of friends around him. She tells him that he didn't experience the things that she did. As Mark tells her that he does understand now, she screams at him to stop. She tells him that he can't understand her. She tells him that he has everything he could possibly want, and she doesn't. Finally breaking down into tears and sobbing on the floor of her best friend's house. But what makes the scene hurt even more is what we learn after the two get home from their trip. As Mark gets home, he enters his parents' old room, grabbing a box from under the bed, thinking about how he can't lie to himself anymore. And it's then revealed to the viewer that Mark's mother, the woman who sacrificed her dreams for her son, was dead the whole time, with the plane she took to go home mysteriously disappearing. No matter how hard Mark and his dad tried to look for her, nobody they could talk to could find her. After getting nowhere with the search, Mark and his father didn't just hold out hope that she was still alive. They ended up denying her death entirely, forcing themselves to believe that she was still alive. And as we watch Mark scroll through his messages with his mother, watching them get more and more desperate, pleading for her to just be there, we finally understand what happened to Mark. We understand that his lack of emotion and motivation was from everything he was holding inside of him, how much he was lying to himself and the people around him. We understand why the piano meant so much to him, with it being the only way he could feel like he could connect with his missing mom, making it seem like she was still with him. We understand the meaning behind his art piece at Nicole's house, the one where 2 lines are vertical and 1 is horizontal. We understand his breakdown at the hospital after seeing a mother and her child, along with a toy airplane crashing to the ground. We also understand why he was so eager to tell Nicole that the only thing that mattered in that moment was the present. It shows how much Nicole has changed his life for the better, wanting to move forward in their lives together. The love he was shown by Nicole and her family gave him passion and inspiration again. He was ready to move forward, but Nicole couldn't accept that. She saw the people who surrounded Mark, his friends, and to her, all she could be reminded of was the friend that left her. The name of her hometown, Purok Pagasa, or Hope Village in English, was symbolic of the hope Nicole had that there was something that Jake left for her. The ruins of the town symbolic of that hope crumbling. But when they arrive at Jake's old home, with it standing despite almost being destroyed, it shows that despite everything that happened, all the pain and suffering she went through, she held out a little bit of hope. Hope that she could get answers, hope that was so fragile it could topple at any moment, but hope nonetheless. In a way, Nicole was being a bit of a hypocrite. Back on the Ferris wheel, she tried to quell Mark's fears by telling him not to focus on the what-ifs, something she was focusing on entirely in that moment. When they argued at Jake's old home, Mark genuinely did believe that he understood what Nicole went through. Both of them held grief in their hearts over the loved ones they both lost, but the difference between them is how they handled that grief. After his mother's death, Mark stubbornly refused the idea that she was truly gone. He kept lying to himself for so long, never telling another soul. It was to the point that Mark himself even states that he might have gone through his entire life still holding on to that lie. Because of his stubbornness, he never truly processed his mother's death, continuing forward despite how dull and empty it made him feel. Nicole, on the other hand, accepted that her best friend was gone, but despite accepting that fact, she was still caught up on why he left, believing that there was some answer to it all. In a way, Mark wasn't willing to accept what happened while Nicole wasn't willing to let go. Their argument at Jake's house reflects back to their first meeting, with Mark wanting to live in the present, running ever forward and to leave the past behind him, while Nicole was standing in one place, unable to let go of not knowing why Jake left, unable to truly live her life again. And because of the different ways they handled their grief, they ended up colliding with each other once again. What angered Mark was that after everything Nicole did for him, and what he thought he did for her, she didn't tell him where they were really going. He was angry because he felt like she didn't explain anything to him. He believed that because of their time together and what they went through, she was ready to move on too. What makes it even worse is that when Mark and his father were trying to locate his mom, they too were probably holding out hope that they'd find her, with that clinging, desperate hope going nowhere, making the moment he told Nicole that her search was for nothing hurt even more. What angered Nicole was that she opened up to him about her past and grief with losing Jake, but when Mark kept telling her that the present was all that matters, she grew angry, believing that despite already knowing her pain towards losing Jake, he was dismissing her feelings and grief. And when Mark told her how she never tells him anything, it enraged her because she did tell him. She opened up about how painful it was losing her best friend. She spilled tears in front of him. And although she was willing to play and teach Mark again, she said before how joining piano club didn't help her, believing Mark already knew what she was talking about. She thought he could never understand her pain and the things she went through. Nicole didn't understand that Mark also lost someone he cares about, believing that he had everything he could have ever wanted. While Mark didn't understand why Nicole wanted to stay in the past after she finally started playing piano again. Mark couldn't accept the reality that his mother was dead, meaning that he never told Nicole about what happened to her, so caught up in his own lie that he felt like he could move forward without facing it. Despite trying to avoid it, he was holding on too. But he had to face it. He had to tell her about the grief he faced for all those years, the hope in his heart that was eventually crushed, the way he drowned himself in his own stubborn delusion. When Nicole broke down in front of Mark in Jake's old home, he saw a butterfly kite stuck in the branches of a tree. This beautiful, colorful creation was a reflection of the two of them. They were two amazing, talented kids with such hopeful futures, but because of their grief, they were stuck in the branches of their loss, unable to spread their wings and fly into their futures. She had inspired him to change and move forward, and he felt like in order for her to truly understand him and for him to understand her, he had to tell her the truth, to tell everyone the truth. We open up to the night of the prom, with Mark and all of his friends dressing up as characters from Greek mythology to fit the school's theme. As Mark and his friends spend the night having fun, he searches for Nicole, who he hadn't spoken to ever since he sent her a letter explaining what happened with his mother. He eventually spots her sitting alone at a nearby table, her hair cut and wearing an outfit resembling the goddess of marriage Hera, sporting the symbol of Hera, the peacock feather, in her hair. As Mark goes up to her, he asks her for a dance, to which she happily accepts. As they dance together, Nicole apologizes to Mark for her anger, telling him that she had no idea about his mother, with Mark replying that it was okay, because he never told her. As they dance, Nicole tells Mark that she secretly envied him. Unlike her, he had all of his friends, and because of that, Nicole believed Mark couldn't understand her pain. Mark then admits to her that she was right about the piano club. He thought that by improving at piano and meeting new people, that would make everything he was feeling inside go away. He was using all of it as an escape from the truth that he had to face. And knowing how Nicole already understood that it was nothing more than an escape made him envy her. He apologizes for thinking that him being with Nicole would have instantly fixed things for her. She then apologizes to him for constantly changing her mind, quite literally pushing him away instead of talking to her about how she was feeling. She tells him that he has every right to hate her, but instead, he takes her hand in his, intertwining their fingers. He tells her that they were just two people trying their best, figuring things out, and that they would continue to try together. As they dance, Mark asks Nicole to tell him about Jake, with Nicole telling him that looking back, despite how much fun they'd have together, he'd never really want to leave, wanting to stay with her just a little longer. She tells Mark that she wishes she talked to him more, to understand what he was going through. She just wished that Jake told her about it. Mark tells her that she shouldn't blame herself for not knowing. She was only a child after all. Nicole then looks at Mark and tells him that he's got a lot of amazing people in his life, and to promise her that he'd take care of all of them. He then tells her to promise him that she'd look after her mom. And as they hug, they promise that they'd take care of and look after each other, with Nicole agreeing, saying that they should care for each other in their own special way, with her kissing Mark on the cheek. And that, ladies and gentlemen, marked the moment where me and my friends started cheering. After all this time, they finally kissed. And although it was only a kiss on the cheek, it was one of the sweetest cheek kisses I've ever seen in a video game. After they finished dancing, Mark tells Nicole that he promised his last dance of the night to his best friend Kathy, who had something to tell him. But as Mark looked around the room, his best friend was nowhere to be found. He and his friends searched everywhere for Kathy, with the only trace of her whereabouts being a butterfly headpiece found outside the prom building, confirming that she left. And as rain begins to pour down, Mark's brain enters panic mode as his best friend was missing and all alone. And if Luis's theory was correct, it could mean that Kathy would disappear forever. As he sprints in the direction that he found her headpiece, Mark begins to hear the sounds of his mother's voice, urging him to keep going as he runs forward to find his best friend. But after hearing his mother's voice, Mark turns around as he considers going towards her. But then he remembers the danger Kathy could be in and he continues forward. As he continues to run, all he can think of is how he can't lose her. But as he stumbles upon a torn piece of her dress, he gets a vision of his mother. The vision is so vivid and real that he goes over to her, grabbing a hold of her hand. Mark's mother Maria tells him about the time that he left food out for too long that it spoiled. She reminds him of how much guilt he had about it, how he blamed himself for weeks, but in reality, it wasn't his fault. Maria tells Mark about how she blames herself for distracting him with things to the point where he didn't eat. But as she tells Mark this, he tells her that none of it matters. The only thing that truly did matter was that she was here, and that together, they could save Kathy. But as he desperately held her hand, Maria pulled away, their hands disconnecting. She tells him that there are simply some things he'll never get to know, and sometimes he doesn't need to be so hard on himself, telling him to keep going, to find Kathy, and to keep running. As Mark begs his mom not to leave him, his vision ends, with him sprinting down the side of the road with tears in his eyes. And just before he was about to give up, he spots his best friend on the other side of the road, her outfit ripped up and her scars visible. When he sees her standing there, he cries out with joy as she runs towards him. But as quickly as that joy came, it was ripped away from him as a truck barreled towards her, and right before they could lock hands, she was taken from him. At Kathy's funeral, Mark meets with the people in his life, talking with his dad Paolo, who finally came home, telling him that they both needed to accept what happened to his mom. He talks with Louise, apologizing to Mark about her theory being wrong, with Mark telling her that he was to blame too. He was the one who pushed her about the rain theory in the first place, even though the rain had nothing to do with it, with Louise so eager and desperate to understand that she went along with it, with the two of them questioning if all the deja vu they felt really was just in their heads. What makes it even sadder is that means Jessica and Polly's disappearances weren't caused by a supernatural force. Instead, they could have well been intentional. Jessica was a quiet, antisocial artist who didn't seem to have a group of friends. Mark tried talking to Jessica about her art, but couldn't make a connection as he was unable to understand it. And as he tried to compliment it, she told Mark that it was an art piece that wasn't really meant to be complimented. Polly, on the other hand, seemed to have a very close relationship with her chess coach, to the point where she went over to his house every day. A strange relationship between a teacher and an adult who isn't part of her family, which could have been the cause of her disappearance. After talking with everyone, he went up to Kathy's coffin, telling her that he wished he did better for her. He wished they had that last dance together, and most of all, he wishes she could just be there with him. There was no doubt Kathy's death hurt Mark greatly, to the point that he snapped at his other best friend Rydell after watching his short film. Throughout all this time, although Mark was busy with piano club and spending time with Nicole, he still found time to hang out with Kathy. Rydell, on the other hand, was never around after he got to work on his short film, and even on his last day with his friends, all he could think about was how excited he was to make this movie. He didn't even find time to wish Mark and Kathy a Merry Christmas. He yelled at Rydell for his absence, with Rydell telling Mark that they were both busy, and that the entire reason he was making this short film in the first place was because he was doing it for Mark and Kathy, and told him that even though Mark was around, was it even enough? With Mark telling Rydell that no, it wasn't. Years pass and Mark and Nicole have gotten happily married and moved in together, with Mark and his friends seemingly going their separate ways. He and Nicole are moving out of Mark's old home, showcasing Mark finally letting go of everything that happened with his mother, wanting a change in his life. Not only that, but Mark and Nicole act as piano-playing partners, duetting countless songs together. It shows how although Mark turned to piano playing as a way to cope with the loss of his mother, he turned it into a way to not only honor his mother's memory, but an expression of love with his new wife. But as he searches through his old stuff, he finds a CD that was given to him after Kathy's death. And as he plays the CD, Mark finally understands what Kathy wanted to tell him all those years ago. The night Mark accepted the truth about his mother's death, it was Kathy who came to comfort him first. She was the first he told about his pain and grief, and after Mark spilled everything to her, she felt that she should do the same, with the CD she recorded on being made just in case she didn't have it in her to tell him at prom. Catherine Portillo was a girl stuck with a terrible home life. She was a victim of verbal and physical abuse by her family, with it being implied that the abuse started when either Kathy came out as bisexual, with earlier photos where she had a crush on a boy showing she had no scars on her arms, or after the events of the ruling, which caused a lot of families' lives to break under the stress. In order to cope with her abusive family, Kathy spent as much time as she possibly could outside of the house and with her friends Mark and Rydell, people she grew to consider her own family. But as time progressed, Mark and Rydell began to drift apart from her, with Rydell getting his big break in filmmaking and photography, and Mark with piano club and his relationship with Nicole. And there she was, caught in the middle of her greatest fear that her two closest friends were running away from her, running off to start their brand new lives while leaving her behind. Kathy initially felt hurt and betrayed by her friends leaving her, even at one point wishing that they'd fail at their endeavors. But as she thought that, she was disgusted with herself for wanting the people she loved to fail just so they could be together longer. She realized that things with them couldn't be the same forever. She felt selfish, and in order to deal with that selfishness, she realized that she had to live for herself. She spent so much time focused on her friends, on staying away from her home life, that she hardly ever thought about her own passions and desires in life. But she knew she wanted to be a racer or a sprinter, or just someone who was ahead of everyone else. It wasn't until she self-reflected that she realized that she was doing the exact opposite of what she wanted to do in her life. While everyone was running towards their future, Kathy was standing still. But after realizing it, she didn't want to stand still any longer. She wanted to run into the future with the people she loves. She tells Mark that every one of their friends would go off to do something amazing and she didn't want to be left behind. While Mark and Rydell followed their own passions, Kathy set off to find her own, inspired by her closest friends to find her passion. Content with knowing that no matter what happens, she can continue trying, continue working on finding something she likes to do, to work hard to find her passions. If one thing she tries isn't something she enjoys, she'll know that she'll find something else, as long as she keeps on going, keeps on running. And as she works, Kathy finds enjoyment with baking, even befriending Luis's best friend Sophia, eventually starting to date her. She tells Mark how she's gonna live her life, to try new things not just for herself, but so the people she loves can see the passion in her eyes shine too. She was going to run into the light with her closest friends. But as Kathy was beginning to find her passions, it was all taken away from her. It seems as if Kathy snuck out to prom in order to attend it, and as her parents tried to force her home, she ran. She ran as hard as she could away to leave her abusive home life, ending up by what appears to be a bus stop. And when Mark finds her, he sees her standing underneath it, holding out her hand as raindrops fall onto it. You see, Kathy is what is known as a pluviophile, someone who loves the rain, telling Mark before that she adores feeling the rain on her hands and wrists. When Mark saw the truck barreling towards Kathy, all he could think about was what she used to say about how butterflies flew in the rain. They couldn't. They had to seek shelter or else they would tatter, or even die. From that, it's clear that when Mark finds Kathy at that bus stop, she was trying to seek shelter. Not from the storm, but from the pain tearing into her heart. Her hands outstretched in the rain to calm herself down as her emotions were going into overdrive. The only thing keeping her steady was the feeling of those droplets running down her hand. It's why when she saw Mark, she didn't notice the truck barreling towards her. She saw her closest friend, someone who opened up his deepest feelings to her and someone she wanted to open up to as well. He ran as hard as he possibly could to find her, searched as hard as he could to bring her back, and in that moment, where she wanted nothing more than to just run away, nothing else mattered in that moment but him. She wanted to tell him everything on her chest, to tell him all about her pain. You can just see on her face how happy she was to see him before it was all gone forever. Previously, I talked about the Greek-themed costumes Mark and his friends were wearing. While Mark's costume could have been something like Zeus to match with Nicole being Hera, someone online pointed out how much Mark has in common with Orpheus. Orpheus was a legendary musician in Greek mythology, and he had a lover named Eurydice, who tragically ended up being killed. In his grief, he entered the underworld and beautifully played his lyre, which softened the hearts of Hades and Persephone, the rulers of the underworld, allowing Orpheus to take Eurydice back with him to the land of the living, under the condition that he never looked behind him until he left the underworld. And after traveling all through the underworld, right before reaching the land of the living, he turns around, causing Eurydice to disappear forever, with Orpheus losing the love of his life once again. Like Orpheus, Mark was a musician who ended up losing someone he loved, turning to music as some form of solution to cope with her death. And when it came time to save someone he loved, Mark, much like Orpheus, turned around. The death of his mother caused him to look back, and when he did, the death of another person he loved played out right in front of him. What adds another layer of pain to this comparison is that in some interpretations of the myth, Eurydice died while running away from a satyr, falling into a viper pit and dying. Like Orpheus, Mark ended up losing someone he loved because they wanted to run away. What's more, Mark wanting to become a skilled piano player correlates with what happened to Orpheus. He believed that if he played well enough, if he played beautifully, it would somehow bring his mom back. But what's truly heartbreaking is what Kathy's outfit represents. She wears a beautiful butterfly-themed dress with long sleeves, used to hide the scars plastered all over her arms. The colors of her dress represent that of a butterfly, but there's also a large part of it that's green, creating a pattern that resembles a butterfly as it begins to emerge from its cocoon. It represents how Kathy herself was like a butterfly. She was beginning to find her reason to live. She discovered something and someone she liked and was ready to live her life. Not only that, but when it comes to Greek mythology, two deities that are associated with butterflies are Psyche and Thanatos. Psyche was the goddess of the soul, who was once a mortal that went through a journey full of trials and tribulations for the sake of love and eventually reached immortality. Thanatos, on the other hand, was the personification of death, the deity who led souls peacefully into the afterlife. Not only did Kathy's butterfly dress show off how she was starting her journey to find her passions and live her life, but the Greek deities associated with butterflies show off how her journey to finding that life was cut dreadfully short. As Mark listens to Kathy's desires to live her life and not be left behind by her friends, knowing that spark of hope was snuffed out before it could shine bright, it fills him with grief. He was so close to understanding what Kathy was going through. They were only a grasp away from each other, but she was pulled away at the last second. As Mark takes it all in, a black butterfly lands on his hand, before the screen cuts to black. Throughout the first part of the game, we see a lot of amazing and intriguing things. Just from this section of the game alone, we can see how much until then exemplifies love. We can see it through Mark and Nicole's ever-growing relationship, the incredible intricate bond between Mark and his best friends, the portrayal of a found family with Mark and Nicole's parents, the complicated grief Mark and Nicole have over the people they've lost, the love for your passions and your interests, the love of finding your own way in life, and the emphasis of understanding. Out of everything we've seen in this first part of the game, however, understanding seems to be the most prevalent theme throughout. It was communicating and understanding each other's personal traumas that caused Mark and Nicole to let go of their grief. It was a lack of understanding that caused Jessica and Polly to go missing, and it was understanding that inspired Kathy to open up her traumas and desires to Mark, albeit too late. Everyone deserves to be understood, as when you understand why a person says or does something, it can often help identify and connect with them. It turns the idea of some malicious or evil person in your head into another human being like yourself. If someone wrongs you, you have every right to be upset, but by trying to communicate and understand what they were thinking or intending, it can cause any anger or lingering frustration to fade. But there are still obvious cases where even if you do understand, you have every right to be angry. By trying to understand, I believe it allows for people to value each other even more. But as we keep diving into this wonderful story, there are still even more reasons why this game is an amazing love story and the best I've seen in a video game ever. Right after the screen cuts to black, we open up to Mark as a teenager again, playing video games on his couch, feeling triumphant after vanquishing another opponent with seemingly no recollection of what happened before. But as he walks to school, things start becoming strange. The book report presentation that he completed minutes before class started was on a completely different book than last time, and what's even weirder is that although Luis was still one of his partners, his previous partner, Ryan Soriano, was replaced. With the absolute queen, Kathy. That's right, she's alive again. But that joy for her being alive again soon gets overshadowed by the fact that their presentation is totally screwed. You see, the reason why Mark was able to get the presentation done before was because he and Ryan were both expert crammers, meaning that with their combined skills, they were able to get the project done in record time. Kathy, however, was no crammer, with her slow typing skills combined with Mark being confused on which book they were presenting on results in, well, less than stellar results. The changes don't stop there, however. For some reason, Luis is a lot more cold and distant than before, and after Mark and Kathy completely screwed up on the project, her opinion on them catastrophically drops. After that mess, Mark once again tries to talk to Jessica, who painted strange swirling crystals of assorted colors with a black and purple swirling background. He tells her how much he loved it, with her telling him that it was something that wasn't meant to be admired. It was meant to be feared. Ominous. After Mark once again fails to get a decent chat out of Jessica, he meets up with his best friends Kathy and Rydell, and as they start talking, that's when the differences between the first part of the game and now really begin to show. As they talk, it's revealed that Rydell's having trouble with his short film, unable to figure out what he wants to say within it and feeling especially low on inspiration. This is a massive shift from before, as when we first see Rydell back then, his short film was already picked up by producers and production was about to begin. This time, however, producers don't seem to be as interested. At home, while scrolling through his phone, he and Kathy decide to go to Luis's chess tournament to both support and apologize to her for their terrible presentation. This is another big change from the start of the game, as previously, Louise invited Mark to watch her chess tournament after they aced their presentation. After scrolling through his phone, Mark begins to play his piano like he always does. Previously, when Mark messed up, he'd wince at his mistakes but continue playing. But as he plays this time, he says how his playing isn't working. Now, this could be a reference to how despite forgetting what happened during the first part of the game, Mark could still remember tidbits, like the book he was supposed to originally present on, meaning that he could have some recollection of being able to play the piano. But when we go further on, we'll see how complaints of his piano playing not working are a lot deeper than what's on the surface. The next day, when Mark and Kathy go over to watch Louise's chess game, things get even more strange. As they watch, Mark questions where Louise's friend Sophia is, with her not being anywhere in sight, and when Louise finishes her match, Mark tries to bring up a video game she played during the first part of the game, but now Louise tells him that she has no idea what that is. Things get even stranger as Mark brings up Polly, the girl Louise was supposed to play who suddenly went missing, with Louise being extremely confused by this, telling Mark that no such disappearance occurred. As they talk, she once again brings up the feelings of deja vu, with Mark telling her he feels like he's been in this place before. The chess tournament, I mean. And unlike before, Louise is hesitant to work with Mark in finding out what was going on, telling him that she might update him on her findings. This is also the part of the game where she introduces Mark to her boyfriend Mike, with no such event occurring this time around. It seems like now Louise doesn't seem to have Mike or Sophia in her life, which explains why she's a lot colder than before, as it was because of those two that she started playing video games and focusing on things other than studying. We then go back to the moment Mark meets Kathy at legally distinct 7-Eleven to stock new transfer students, but this time around, Rydell's with them. Before Kathy arrives, Mark and Rydell open up to one another about how they're struggling with their own respective hobbies. Mark tells him it's like he's hit an invisible wall with his piano playing, with Rydell agreeing, telling Mark that with his short film, he doesn't know what he's even doing it for anymore. As they talk about their struggles, Rydell and Mark offer each other encouragement, offering to help one another with their inspiration. This is honestly one of the first times we see how close of a friend Rydell is to Mark, as previously, all they really had together was a few moments of bantering, with the only moments of him really being there with his friends coming from statements and photos. But now, we really do see how close Rydell is with Mark, as they're both struggling with motivation in their hobbies, being able to put into words how the other is feeling about it. And it's especially sweet how they offer to support one another in their goals. Once Kathy arrives, the three begin to stalk the transfer students, with Mark once again feeling intense familiarity when he hears Nicole's name. When Kathy then suddenly got a call from her mom, instead of answering it like she did in the first part of the game, she refused to pick up. And when Mark and Rydell questioned it, she told him that she's with them right now, and that's the most important thing to her. As the rain begins to pour overhead, the three friends stand together under an umbrella, and when Kathy tries to tell them about what happens to butterflies in the rain, Mark finishes her sentence for her, getting a concerned look on his face. But as the three of them talk and banter together, Mark's concern slowly slips away, with Kathy expressing how happy she is that all three of them are hanging out together. But as they sit under the umbrella, taking in the sounds of the rain, Mark can't help but feel like something's off. Rydell's inclusion within the story is incredibly huge, as not only does it give him more character, showing off his struggles with motivation and sentimentality with his picture taking, but it also changes up Kathy's character significantly. Because Rydell's with them, Kathy no longer has a feeling of dread that her friends are going to be running away from her. She's over the moon spending time with the people she loves, to the point where she completely ignores her mom's calls as she wants to spend her full, undivided attention on her friends. It's honestly really interesting how much of an impact Rydell's inclusion makes on Mark and Kathy, and despite those two being incredible together, it's this scene that truly shows why Mark and Kathy were sad when he left. Watching this scene and then going back to the first scene with Mark and Kathy, you can just feel his absence. It turns a sweet, slightly sad scene where two friends express their sadness at missing their other friend, to a sweet and hopeful one where three friends vow to help one another with their goals and passions, albeit with some things feeling a bit off. We'll get to that later though. After the exams, Mark and Rydell arrive at school early to help Kathy with a plan to win the heart of one of the transfer students. Before Kathy's arrival, Mark and Rydell continue to chat about their lack of motivation, with Rydell telling Mark how he wants to make something he's proud of, he just doesn't know how. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the most relatable thing Rydell's ever said. He tells Mark that he knows his starting and ending point, but when it comes to the middle, the process of creation, he has no idea what he wants to do. With Mark telling him that it's all about getting from point A to point B, telling Rydell that it looks like they both have their work cut out for them. Mark and Rydell's dynamic is honestly super interesting to look at when compared to his dynamic with Kathy. We got a whole plethora of Mark and Kathy moments in the first part of the game, with most of those moments being really sweet as their chemistry is honestly incredible. But when it comes to Mark and Rydell, while their chemistry isn't as good as his and Kathy's are when they're alone, it seems that the two have a deeper understanding of the other that they don't have with Kathy. While Mark was sad about Rydell leaving to work on his short film, even to the point of calling him out after Kathy's funeral, I felt like he was a lot less distraught about it than Kathy was, as not only did he have his own pursuits going on with the piano club and Nicole, but he even tells Nicole that he doesn't blame Rydell for going, since it was an extremely valuable opportunity for him. Rydell, in turn, respects and values Mark's desire to learn the piano, as when Kathy caught Mark miming playing the piano at his school desk, she tells Rydell as a way of teasing Mark, with Rydell telling her that he respects his dedication, telling Kathy that he also mimes taking photos with his hands. In short, while Mark and Rydell have an extremely sweet and close relationship with Kathy, it seems that when they have a problem or trouble, they seem to turn to each other first. Continuing on, once Kathy arrives, the three wait for the new transfer student Kate Corpus to come in so she can try winning her heart. Now, I haven't given much detail about Kate, but that's because she does practically nothing in the first part of the game. She shows up, blows off Kathy and Mark, listens to Mark and Nicole play Time Is Tearing Us Apart in secret, and that's about it. And this time, she blows off Kathy's advances once again. When Mark talks to her, he asks if she and Nicole were transferring from the same area and if they were friends, with Kate telling him to get out of her face, which was something Mark never brought up the first time they talked. Later on, Mark and Kathy talk about how their poster project was due, with Kathy asking Mark if he finished it. Now for context, remember how Mark and Nicole crashed into each other? Well, not completing the art project was why Mark was running in the halls in the first place, having only a few minutes to finish. Nicole, on the other hand, was in the middle of the halls working on her poster, which caused them to collide. This time, however, Mark was ready, telling Kathy that he already finished his art poster of Mother Earth, which confused Kathy. Although Mother Earth was the theme of their posters for the first part of the game, this time it was world hunger. You know what that means. Once again, Mark ducks and weaves through the halls to get some art supplies, but as he's about to crash into a familiar face yet again, the world around him changes and suddenly he's back on the road, with the truck getting closer and closer until it all cuts to black. Once again, Mark and Nicole argue, get thrown into the principal's office, he tries to impress her, and the two start bantering. This time, however, when Nicole makes a comment about cars crashing, it causes Mark to get a concerned look on his face, faltering with his comebacks. This, combined with what he saw before crashing into Nicole, clearly shows how he still remembers a bit of what happened before. And like before, Mark agrees to help Nicole with her poster and the two go to her house. But when they sit down and paint, things are different. This time, Nicole tells Mark that when they crashed into each other, it felt familiar. This is something that took her until the 4th chapter of the game to say to him, but now, she's telling him this in the 2nd chapter, much faster than the first time. And when Nicole tells him that he has to find that spark, Mark finishes the quote for her. Later on, Mark goes to the bathroom yet again, getting distracted by the piano pushed away in a random room. And when he sits at it, he starts playing. Now last time this event happened, Mark played Edvard Grieg's Wedding Day, but this time, he plays Time Is Tearing Us Apart. After hearing this, Nicole barges in, being a lot more angry than last time, demanding to know where Mark heard that piece. Before she can kick him out, however, her parents come downstairs, asking about the playing, causing Nicole to tear up and run out of the room. This time, Nicole's parents ask Mark if he wants to stay for dinner, with Nicole being absent for it. Now, the dinner scene was originally supposed to be the moment where Mark finally feels like he has a family again, the moment that made him want to try and start living again. This time, Mark opens up to Nicole's family about how he heard Nicole's piece from his mother Maria, almost spilling to them that his mother was dead. Nicole's parents in turn tell Mark that the piece that his mom used to play for him was written by Nicole, telling him that she's been through a lot of pain and trauma, telling him that she just wants to leave it all in the past, with Nicole listening to the whole thing from the top of the stairs. It honestly makes a lot of sense why Nicole was so much angrier this time, because before, Mark's playing was just a reminder of her piano playing days, with those memories being associated with Jake's loss. Now, however, Mark was playing a piece Nicole made for Jake, a piece that he never got to hear and brought her back to the whole reason she stopped playing piano directly. This time, instead of stabbing her with the trauma knife, Mark plunged that thing directly into Nicole's heart. Because the dinner with the Laksamana family was a lot more melancholy than sweet this time, Mark doesn't get those feelings of wanting to live again afterward. Instead, the scene opens up with Mark arriving at a basketball court, with him and Kathy being there because they wanted to help Rydell find some inspiration for his film. As Rydell gets them into position, he tells them the prompt. They're two friends who haven't seen each other in a long time. I think you all know where this is going. While the two of them initially act like two best friends would when asked to try and act together, I say this from experience, Mark and Kathy really begin acting. Mark tells Kathy that he thought he'd never see her again, with her apologizing, telling him that she didn't mean to leave him. And even though she was gone, she was here now. Mark then asks her if she really was there, saying that she can't be here, not anymore. As Kathy reassures him that she'll always be there for him, he tells her that she isn't, and all he wants is for her to be here with him, as he breaks down crying. As Kathy and Rydell commend him for his performance, Mark looks at them with tears in his eyes, and he opens up to them about his mother. And as he spills to them everything that happened, why he wanted to play the piano and all the pain he was feeling, Kathy looks away upset. While Mark opens up, we can see that he's primarily looking at Rydell the entire time, with the screen darkening as Kathy looks between the two. And when she finally averts her gaze, the darkness subsides. Rydell tells Mark that at least by playing the piano, he'll feel closer to his mom, and Kathy tells him that she, him, and Rydell will all work together, helping Mark improve at piano and getting Rydell the inspiration he needs for his short film. She tells him how life can be really shitty, and the only thing they can do is their best to make it not shitty. Rydell tells Mark that they're all gonna be in this together, and after getting reassurance from his closest friends, Mark and Kathy begin acting once more, determined to help Rydell with his short film. And as Rydell begins to set up once more, Kathy stares at Mark, a gentle yet seemingly sad smile on her face, and as Rydell yells action, she takes a deep breath before putting on a big smile as the screen cuts to black. This is a massive change from what originally happened, with it taking until the end of the first part of the game for Mark to finally come to terms with what happened to his mother. It took months of being by Nicole's side for him to finally accept what happened, with Mark and Nicole's shared grief and his desire to move forward in his life with her that caused him to finally face it. This time, however, even though Mark and Nicole's relationship hasn't bloomed yet like it had previously, it makes a lot of sense why he opened up. For one, Mark already had feelings of doubt with his piano playing, with the hobby not working and making it feel like his mother was still there. Adding on to that, he and Rydell's mutual unmotivated feelings in their respective hobbies allowed him to accept his mother's death faster, as when Rydell was telling Mark about his struggle with the filmmaking process, Mark tells him it's all about getting from point A to point B. But with Mark's goals to play the piano, what would be his point A and point B? The reason he wanted to play the piano in the first place was because he wanted to feel like his mother was still with him. But what exactly would be the end goal of that? It seems like he only wanted to get better so he could lie to himself easier, which I feel like is something Mark realized. Continuing on, he also heard from Nicole's parents about how hard she had it and how all she wants is a new start, which is something that Mark related to. And the final wake-up call Mark needed to finally open up and accept what happened with his mother was his acting with Kathy. Although it is emotional to watch because of what we already know about Kathy, I don't believe Mark remembered her death at this time. The things that he was saying and the way she responded made me feel like Mark was talking to his mother, using Kathy's acting as a way for him to finally get what he wanted to say off his chest. With him telling her that she left him and that he had to accept that she wasn't there anymore no matter how hard he wished her to be. After finally being able to say what he wanted to after so long, he was able to open up to his friends about what happened. What makes it even more sweet is that even though Mark had been lying to them for years, they reassure Mark that it's okay. They tell him that they'll help him with piano, turning his intentions from making it seem like his mom was still with him into helping him feel closer to her. While both were motivations that centered around love, Mark's initial motivation was a self-destructive one, done so that he could lie to himself even more. But with the help of his closest friends, he was able to get a new motivation, one that allows him to accept his mother's death but continue to play and improve at the piano in order to honor her memory. The last thing that's extremely interesting to me about this scene is how Kathy takes Mark's confession. In the first part of the game, Kathy was the first person Mark told about his mother, which prompted her to tell Mark about what was happening in her home life and her feelings of being left behind. As Mark confesses to her and Rydell this time, she looks a bit sad but reassures them that all three will be there for each other, and as Rydell yells action, she puts back on a smile. It makes you wonder if Kathy will open up to Mark about how she was feeling and what was going on in her home life like before, but with her smiling when she was about to start acting again, it makes it seem like she was still wearing this mask of positivity while she was hurting inside. But of course, there's still more, so let's keep going. We open up with Mark arriving at a small cafe on top of a large hill called Hillstop Cafe. They're there to meet Rydell in order to help him take some photos. As Mark waits for Rydell, he stumbles upon Louise, alongside a laser pointer shining inside of a box. It seems like Louise wasn't really keen on having Mark help her with the deja vu, as she tells him she's already begun research. Despite already starting without him, Mark tells Louise about the feelings of deja vu with Nicole, even mentioning the visions of the truck. After recapping what happened with Louise, she takes Mark to the laser pointer in the box, explaining what she's doing with them. Now it's time for me to try and explain more of this sci-fi stuff, so here we go. What Louise did is known as the double slit experiment, an experiment that's used in quantum mechanics that shows how entities like light can exhibit wave and particle-like behavior. She took a laser pointer, attached 2 pieces of tape to make the exit of the laser extremely thin, and then added a string that went down the center of it. When doing so, the laser that shines onto the box should look like this, but in the game it ends up looking like this. Louise explains that a pattern like this shouldn't be possible, and that she only observed it at this cafe. After Louise and Mark finally make a shaky agreement to work together, Mark asks Rydell about the Hillstop Cafe and its origins. Rydell tells Mark and Louise that this cafe and the couple who ran it use it as a place to help refugees of the ruling, providing them with food and a place to sleep. After getting this, Rydell tells Mark that they have to get going in order to make it to the fair and meet up with Kathy. The two of them then ask Louise if she wants to come with them, with her declining, saying that she has to continue her research. As Mark, Kathy, and Rydell explore the fair, because this time Mark isn't having a hallucinatory panic attack and Rydell isn't obsessing over his short film, the trio actually have a fun time at the fair. As the three sit down and rest for a bit, Mark and Rydell begin to discuss the feelings of deja vu, with them then asking Kath how her life's been. She tells them that it's just the same old routine, going to school and going home, unless Mark and Rydell were out doing something, telling them that they shake up her boring life. As the three friends continue their fair trip, they all decide to ride on the Ferris wheel, and when they stand in line, who do they run into but Nicole? Seeing her standing in line, Kathy and Rydell quickly leave to let Mark talk to her on his own. God, these two are genuinely just awesome friends. Despite Nicole's anger towards him at the house, she seems to have let go of that anger and rides the Ferris wheel with him. As the duo talk, Mark apologizes to Nicole for playing that song, telling her that it really struck a chord with his mom. He then opens up to Nicole about his mother's death, telling her about how he wants to learn just to feel closer to her. And in turn, Nicole opens up to him about her best friend Jake's disappearance. She tells Mark how hard she and her family are trying to start over, but despite that desire, she still wishes she could do things back at home. As the two bond and agree to a fresh start, Nicole offers to be Mark's mentor, which is the exact opposite of what happened before. After shaking on it, Mark decides to take Nicole to a haunted house, where they dress up as monsters to scare guests. But while they run around the haunted house scaring people, Mark suddenly gets a vision. A vision of him standing in the middle of the road as a truck barrels toward him. As he snaps out of the vision, Nicole finds him on the ground shaken up. Realizing how shaky he sounds, she takes his hand and helps him get out of the haunted house. Now, Mark and Nicole's relationship in this part of the game is really interesting to me. Mark is no longer in a place where he needs Nicole's help to process his grief, and Nicole this time around expressed to Mark how she still had some desire to go back to her old home. They opened up to each other a lot earlier than before, but whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing remains to be seen. As Mark returns home from the fair, he spots Rydell and Kathy standing outside his front door, laughing at the photos Rydell took during their fair adventure. While they chat about the fun they had, Rydell tells him that he needs to get home, telling Mark that he only walked to his house to escort Kathy, telling the other two that Ryan Soriano, Mark's former partner, never showed up to his job at the fair. In this timeline, however, Ryan isn't in Mark and Kathy's class, meaning that they never became friends. After Rydell leaves, Kathy hangs out with Mark at his place, and while he makes the two of them dinner, he gets a text from Nicole, checking in on him after what happened at the haunted house, telling Mark that she too has been feeling lightheaded recently, and after the two chat for a bit, Mark takes Kathy to his room to show her something. As he plays Time Is Tearing Us Apart for her, he tells Kathy about how Nicole wrote this piece, with Mark's mom hearing it in a piano concert and playing it for him, to which Kathy refers to them as star-crossed lovers, who are destined to crash into one another. Mark then tells Kathy about the piano club, telling her how even though he feels like it won't do anything to help him with his mother's death, he and Nicole both want to give it a try. And when Kathy asks if joining the club needs to do anything for him, Mark tells her he wants to be heard and understood through it, along with it being a way for Mark and Nicole to help each other. It's nice this time around. Mark understands how he can't use the piano club as some sort of escape, instead choosing it more for enjoyment and to get better at the hobby. As Mark and Kathy eat dinner together, he asks her what she knows about the ruling, with Kathy telling him that her parents talk about it all the time, claiming it was some sort of bad omen from God. But as Mark continues to worry about it, she tells him that they're just a couple of kids, and it's not like the world almost ending was their fault. To get his mind off the ruling, Kathy and Mark decide to play a racing game together that Kathy usually dominates him in. But tonight, Mark finally manages to win, because Kathy ended up falling asleep on him. As Mark tries unsuccessfully to wake her up, he ends up taking a look at all the photos Rydell took of them, showing off all their little adventures at the fair. After looking at everything they did together, Mark wraps her up in a little blanket and hoists her onto his shoulders, taking her home. Initially, the racing game scene was when Kathy decided to let go of her feelings of abandonment and insecurity when Mark and Rydell went off on their own paths. But now, because they were all together this time, this just comes off as a bittersweet moment. The trio spent a lot of time together at the fair, hanging out and having fun. And with Rydell there, Kathy wasn't left all alone when Mark went off with Nicole. What does make the moment more sad, however, is what it implies about Kathy's home life. Remember, Kathy's parents believed that the ruling was an omen from God, which could give further evidence that Kathy started getting physically abused when she came out as bisexual, as her hyper-religious parents could have seen it as something against God's teachings. Or it could just be that the ruling caused them a great amount of stress to the point where they took it out on Kathy and her siblings. As for why Kathy fell into such a deep sleep, I believe it was a combination of how comfortable she is around Mark and how long she was awake. Remember, she hates it at home, meaning she likes to spend as much time out of the house as possible. She seems to have no trouble getting up early, seeing when she, Mark, and Rydell got to school before the sun rose in order to talk to Kate. So I believe that waking up early, along with a long day full of having fun with friends, is what caused her to fall asleep, combined with how much she cares for and how comfortable she is around Mark. Overall, it's a really sweet scene between Mark and Kathy, but it does raise some more concerns about her home life. The next day, Mark and Nicole both sign up for the piano club instantly, unlike before where it took Nicole teaching Mark for a long period of time for her to finally join. As the two sit at the piano, they begin their duet of Time Is Tearing Us Apart. When they begin, I adore the difference between the two, with Nicole looking so happy to finally be playing the piano again, and Mark being nervous and sweaty, just trying his best to keep up with his mentor. And as they play, footsteps could be heard coming towards the club meeting, with Kate coming into the room. As Nicole glances up and sees Kate, she stops playing and runs out of the room, with Mark following her. As they meet up on the roof, Nicole tells Mark about her relationship with Kate. The two of them were friends, classmates, and lived in the same town, with Kate being a lot more happy and friendly back then. She tells Mark that Kate's home life was rough, with her family splitting apart, which was around the time that they stopped being friends. They would later reconcile and become close once again at the refugee center they both stayed at, but after remembering why they stopped being friends in the first place, they drifted apart yet again. After Nicole opens up about Kate, they then talk about how often their heads feel strange, getting those feelings of deja vu, with Mark telling Nicole that they should talk to Louise sometime. Once their conversation on the roof ends, Nicole begins to train Mark yet again, and as they practice together, it's clear that this time around, Nicole feels more part of the group. Just look at the piano club photos back to back. And if you're wondering why those two are looking at each other and blushing, it's because the boy, Justin, rizzed her up with a B-movie quote. There is more to that, but I will not elaborate. As Mark and Nicole sit together late at night, she gets a worried look on her face, asking him if he thinks that they're helping each other, if what they're trying to do together is enough. As Mark takes her to the roof once again, Nicole tells him how she feels like they're not saying enough or hearing each other enough. But Mark tells her that the two of them are doing all that they can. Loss is a really hard thing to deal with, and it takes time to heal. She then asks him if he wishes he could have said more to his mom, like she wished she did for Jake. She tells him how easy it is for people to hide how they're truly feeling and to ignore it, wishing that sincerity was easier. After hearing her words, Mark comforts her, telling her that she might be thinking about it too deeply and that they're doing all that they can right now. And as they stare into the night sky, the two of them assure each other that they'll get through it together. After talking with Nicole, Mark begins to head home, but is stopped by Kate. The two of them talk about Nicole finally playing piano again, with Kate revealing that Jake, Nicole's best friend, was her brother this whole time. She tells Mark that although Nicole's fun to be around at first, she's always stuck in the past. She tells Mark about how Jake and her mother disappeared one day without a trace, and that because of that loss and that pain, she and Nicole stopped talking. And even though they did bond again at the evacuation center, it was over the loss of her brother and the loss of their home. But after a while, despite Kate wanting to move forward in life, Nicole couldn't stop talking about Jake, about trying to find him. To Kate, she was done being hung up on the brother who left without a word. But like Nicole did with Mark previously, she went to the ruins of her old hometown, hoping to find a trace of him, with Kate following despite her reluctance. The ruins of everything she held dear overwhelmed her, but Nicole didn't seem to care about it, with Kate warning Mark that even though Nicole says she wants to start a new life, she'll always choose the past over the present and future. She tells Mark that when you feel ready to move on, then it'll be your fault. Your fault for letting go and trying to move forward. When Mark tries to defend Nicole, Kate points out that she hid parts of her past with herself and Jake, asking Mark what else she's willing to hide from him, to lie, to go back on her word. She warns Mark that he's going to eventually want to move forward one day, and that Nicole seems like she never will. Remember back in the first act when Nicole looked at Mark's art piece, the two vertical lines and the horizontal one? Well, the reason her face fell wasn't just because of the lack of effort put into it. It must have reminded her of Kate and Jake, with her and Kate being the two vertical strokes. This is the first time Kate's gotten a pretty major scene, and it's honestly really interesting to think about. We know as an audience that her warnings about Nicole not being able to move on can be wrong, seeing as how Mark was happily married to the woman. But from Kate's perspective, her anger towards Nicole does make a lot of sense. Imagine if your sibling went missing and one of the only people you have close to in your life just can't stop talking about it. The constant reminder of what happened must have hurt. And following someone you care about back to the dangerous, unstable ruin of your old town just because they're holding on to the slightest chance your sibling left a clue or trace of where they went must be painful. Reliving all that trauma, all the memories that were crushed underneath the rubble. And while it is fair that some people take longer to grieve than others, the constant reminder of that pain can be unbearable. Kate also says that when you're ready to move on, that it'll be your fault, meaning that Nicole and Kate obviously had some sort of heated falling out, where Nicole blamed Kate for her desire to move forward. What is strange about all of this, however, is that as an audience, we know that Nicole is trying her hardest to move on, while Kate warns Mark about the kind of person Nicole was during their time at the evacuation shelter. In an ironic twist, Kate is the one living in the past, while Nicole is trying her hardest to move towards the future and live in the present. As the chapter opens up, Mark is supposed to meet with Nicole and Luis in order to discuss her research on the déjà vu, and from his texts, it's clear that Kate's words have affected Mark, as he's becoming a lot more dry with Nicole, hardly responding to her messages and saying very little. Honestly, even after running through the game again, Mark choosing to avoid Nicole after talking with Kate confuses me. The two of them have talked a lot about starting anew, and both are working hard to let go of their grief and move forward. While Nicole has opened up about wishing she could go back, I feel like that shouldn't deter Mark from spending time with her. I could understand him being upset that he didn't tell her about her entire history with Kate, but he saw how hard she was working to try and find ways to move forward. I just feel like one talk from Kate shouldn't have caused him to move away from Nicole. Anyways, before meeting with those two, he talks with Kathy and Rydell, with them telling Mark that Rydell managed to get an interview with a production company to pitch his short film. Kathy and Mark ask Rydell if they can come to support him, to which he agrees to. As Rydell leaves, Kathy asks Mark if he and Nicole are okay, as he isn't constantly talking about her like he used to. Mark then opens up to Kathy about what Kate said, asking her what she'd do if she heard something bad about someone she cared about, something they did. To which Kathy replies that she just talked to that person and try to understand, telling Mark that things would be a lot easier if people would just talk to one another, which is actually really good advice. People should really just talk to each other more instead of letting it stew inside them until it becomes volatile. As Kathy leaves, Luis arrives and she and Mark talk about his visions of the truck, with Mark telling her about this feeling like he needed to run, and him knowing that there was someone else with him. After explaining what he saw, Mark and Luis head to the science lab to meet with Nicole, their interactions definitely being a bit awkward. Anyways, after some painful back and forth, Luis shows Mark and Nicole another theory for the strange phenomenons going on, but luckily this one's pretty straightforward. Luis theorizes, using balls in a dish, there are multiple realities spanning throughout time and space, with the number of realities seeming to grow at an extremely fast rate, causing some of them to touch and merge, causing things in the universe to change, with her using the double slit experiment to find places where the collisions of different realities are occurring. If the slit looks off, then the place has been affected. Anyways, after Luis explains her theories to the duo, we move on to Mark, Kathy, and Rydell sitting in the lobby of the production company that's supposed to interview Rydell. As they sit in the lobby, Mark and Kathy reassure a nervous Rydell that he'll do great. And when they walk to the conference room, we understand his nervousness. Look at all the awards this production studio has won, all the movies they've helped make. These guys are clearly big shots and Rydell needs to bring his A game. As Rydell gives his pitch to the producers, Mark and Kathy sit outside, a bit nervous for their friend, but sure that he has this in the bag. And as they say this, we can see Rydell in the background getting nervous while he talks. While Rydell's in there fighting for his life, Kathy asks Mark about the piano club, asking if he talked to Nicole yet, which, let's be real, he didn't really. As the two talk, Mark tells Kathy that everything seems so messed up, with Kathy telling him that at least they're alright. Mark then asks Kathy if she's got any good news to share, with her saying it's all the same old, with Mark telling her that she says that a lot. As Rydell exits the conference room, he looks extremely upset. It's clear that his short film didn't get the green light. As Kathy tries over and over to reassure Rydell that it's going to be okay, he asks her to just stop. Now wasn't a good time. He tells his friends how hard he worked on it, how he put his heart and soul into creating it, devastated that it wasn't enough. He then walks away, wishing the other two a good night as he needs some time alone. As Kathy watches him leave, she's left stumped on trying to find a way to cheer him up, disappointed one of her best friends left upset. While standing at the bus stop, Mark gets a text from Nicole, telling him how much she misses spending time with him, along with an email from his father, still in denial about Maria's death. As Mark looks at the texts, clearly upset, Kathy asks Mark if he wants to stay and watch the fireworks show. As the two look up into the night sky, Kath apologizes to Mark, telling him that she just wants everybody to be happy. As they watch the fireworks erupt overhead, Kathy asks Mark if they're all gonna be okay, and before he can answer, the fireworks flash into his eyes, reminding him of the truck's headlights, causing more memories of the past to come back to him, being reminded of the time they hung out in the previous timeline, the time when her brother arrived and forced her to come back home despite her not wanting to. Mark begins to get desperate and scared, and as he grabs her hand, he asks her, "What is she hiding?" And as the screen cuts to black, all she can say is that she was sorry. As the screen fades back in, a few days have passed and it's now Christmas. Mark and Kathy are standing in his living room, with Kathy asking Mark if he wants to go out and do stuff with her on Christmas, with Mark telling her that all he wants to do is stay in this year. He asks her if her family is celebrating Christmas, with her dodging the question and saying that she thought he'd want the company. As they sit, Mark opens up to Kathy about how he worries for his father, afraid of the denial he has about his wife's death and how to approach it. He tells Kathy he feels like he doesn't know how to talk to anyone, confessing he didn't talk to Nicole yet. He admits that he feels hurt she lied to him. Mark tells her that he's afraid he's waited too long to talk, with Kathy telling him that if he thinks about it like that, then he'll never get to know and it'll hurt him forever. And even though talking won't solve everything, at least by talking you'll understand someone better. After hearing this, Mark then asks, what about her? He asks her why she won't talk to him or Rydell, wanting to understand her and what she's going through. When Kathy responds that there's nothing to be understood, Mark yells at her that she's lying, that he's sick of everybody lying to him. As his frustration and confusion reaches a boiling point, he screams at her, asking doesn't she trust him? As Mark realizes what he did and seeing the tears in Kathy's eyes, he runs off, apologizing for what he said. He flees to his room, desperately trying to play the piano, knowing that playing wouldn't solve anything, but he does anyway, because it reminds him of his mom. It makes him wish that she was still here with him. Maybe if his mom was here, she'd know how to talk to Nicole. It's all that he wants, for her to just be there. As he sits at the piano, he hears someone scream, and when he investigates, he sees Kathy standing in the living room having set the table and made slightly burnt, lopsided Christmas pancakes. As Mark stares in awe at what she did for him, she apologizes, telling him that she's a hypocrite and she should have trusted him and Rydell. Before Mark can apologize as well, she opens up to him, telling him how bad things are at home, with all the yelling and anger towards her. As she tears up, Kathy tells Mark that who cares if her parents don't like her, even when things are rough she still has him and Rydell. And in that moment the doorbell rings, and standing before the two is Rydell, apologizing for acting like such a jerk after failing to get his short film produced. They tell him that there's nothing to apologize for, and as Rydell enters the house, he sets down a Christmas cake, putting it in between the pancakes and apologizing for it being a little squashed. As Mark and Kathy look a bit sad, Rydell wraps his arms around them, cheering them up as they swear at Cumbing Studios for Rydell's rejection. As the three friends eat their little Christmas feast, the camera pans to the table, showing photos of the trio's adventures together, their love for each other. I genuinely think Mark, Kathy, and Rydell are one of the greatest trio of friends I've ever seen in any piece of media. And what I think I love about them the most is that they aren't perfect friends to each other. I realized that Mark's anger towards being lied to, why it made him so upset, and why he started avoiding Nicole is because he was lying to himself for years. He was stuck in this wretched, horrible place in his heart for a long time, finally being able to climb out after so long thanks to the people around him. But when he's told that Nicole, someone he could connect with through their mutual desire to move forward past their grief, lied to him, he immediately turned away because of how sick he was of lying. He couldn't understand why she didn't tell him about Kate and Jake, which in turn made him get mad at Kathy, not being able to understand why she of all people wouldn't open up to him. It's why he got so angry at Kathy for telling him that nothing was wrong. Kathy herself wanted so desperately for everyone to be happy that she failed to realize that sometimes people need time to grieve when something bad happens. They need to be sad before they can truly become happy again. Her constant focus on her friend's happiness caused her to ignore her own, causing her to tell her friends that nothing was wrong in her life. She refused to open up, afraid of the pain and bringing the people she cares about into it. Even though she pushed Mark to talk about his problems with Nicole, she refused to do the same. Rydell was heartbroken after the film he put his heart and soul into was rejected, feeling like even though he tried his best, it still wasn't enough. It caused him to walk away from his friends, ignoring them for days. But despite that pain and anger they were all feeling inside, they still reconciled with one another and became better friends because of it. Mark, Kathy, and Rydell may not be perfect to one another, but they're the perfect definition of what friends truly are. They're there for each other. They support each other through their toughest times and celebrate when they succeed. Sometimes they fight, they argue, they make mistakes, and they misunderstand each other. But at the end of the day, they learn more about each other. They try their best to understand one another because they truly do love each other. As you look at their Christmas dinner, it's 3 plates of food, all imperfect in some way. But despite their flaws, to those 3 friends, it's the perfect meal for them. As the story continues, we get a look at 3 extremely interesting moments in Luis, Nicole, and Mark's lives. Luis, whose home life isn't shown very often, has a deceased father and 2 older sisters, who both already graduated and went off to college. We learn how hard she studies every hour of the day, wanting to honor the memory of her father through her education, and that, as expected, she hasn't been in contact with Sophia for what seems to be many years now. But despite all of her hard work she put into her studies, we watch as she gets her rejection letter from the University of New Hampton. Next, we see a young Nicole at a piano recital, anxious because Jake and his family haven't arrived yet, with Nicole adamant that Jake couldn't miss this performance. We lastly see Mark in a much smaller, a lot more run-down looking house, trying his best to keep Rain from getting inside. As he looks down at an embroidery made by his mother, he notes that she'll finally be able to finish it, and that it was about damn time. Just then he hears on the news about a flight going to the Philippines that went missing, with one of the passengers being Mark's mother, and as Mark watches the TV in horror, he hears someone's voice scream out to him telling him that something happened to Kathy. As the screen cuts to black, it's revealed that it was all just a dream, as Mark fell asleep while practicing for the piano club's recital. As he reads about Jessica's disappearance once again, he plays his piano. Something that I didn't realize during my first run through the game was that Mark's piano playing is slightly worse than in the first timeline, due to him avoiding Nicole. Questioning why he would think about his mother returning home and say it's about time, confused on why he'd ever react that way, and after his last bit of practice, he heads to the piano recital. When he gets there, Kathy and Rydell are in the audience because they're actually just the best, and when he talks to them, Mark and Rydell comment on another bandage on Kathy's cheek, and despite opening up to Mark about her horrible home life, she brushes it off, telling them that she'll talk to them about it later and for Mark to focus on his playing. As Mark watches his fellow club members play, he looks around for Nicole, worried as she hasn't shown up yet. And as he steps up to play, once again Nicole shows up at the last second, giving Mark a reassuring smile which makes him determined to not let his mentor down. Now, because Mark was dreaming about the night his mother went missing, it's safe to assume that Nicole's dream was about the night that Jake never showed up to her piano recital. I think that Nicole was considering not showing up to the piano recital, as her doing piano was something that she wanted to do with Mark as a way for both of them to move on from their trauma. And if she was having to go through all of that alone without Mark, it definitely makes sense that she'd not want to go. But after that dream, remembering how her closest friend wasn't there for her that night, she knew she had to be there for Mark. What follows is a full 5-minute scene of Mark and Nicole playing the piano, and it might be one of the best Mark and Nicole scenes in the entire game. As the two begin their performances, it's clear that the only person they're seeing in the audience is the other, and while normally they duet songs, the cut between each of them playing is extremely hard and recognizable. It shows that this time around, because of the circumstances and what's happened, they're not as close or in sync as they were previously. In fact, their performances completely contrasted each other. A bright, warm light flashed across Mark's face along with a small smile, a testament to how his life was going. He had accepted the death of his mother and opened up to his closest friends. Despite avoiding Nicole, he was determined not to let her down, and despite how much he was hurting, he had his friends with him to cheer him up when he was at a low point. Nicole, on the other hand, was shrouded in a cold, sad blue light, with a serious expression plastered on her face. She was trying and struggling to move forward after Jake's disappearance. When she finally found someone to help her move forward, he ran away from her, started avoiding her. In fact, it's definitely intentional how awkward the two songs Mark and Nicole are playing cut together, as the piece Mark is playing is Edvard Grieg's Wedding Day. Nicole, on the other hand, was playing Fritz Kreisler's Liebeslied, or Love Sorrow, a stark contrast to Mark's piece. As the two continue to play, the room around them turns to black, and the only thing that they can see when they play is the other, playing on their own piano. As they stared at each other in this endless void, they took turns playing their piece. As they took turns looking at each other as they played, it's clear that in some weird way, they were using the piano to communicate with each other, each using their songs to express how they were feeling to the other. The looks on their faces showing the raw emotion they were putting into every single note. As the camera switches between their playing, it's like the two of them are talking, arguing each saying what's been on their mind for so long through the piano. And when Mark looks at Nicole as she pours her heart and soul into her piece, one about love and sorrow, he gets a smile on his face, as in that moment he understands. He understands that Nicole wasn't trying to lie to him at all. He knows that his fear of it being too late to talk to her should be discarded, as she still feels the pain of him leaving her. Through their shared passion of the pieces they were playing, I believe that it reminded Mark that they joined the piano club to try to help move on from the pain of their losses together. He decides that it's time. Finally time to talk to her, to understand. When the two meet on that iconic roof, Mark asks Nicole why she didn't tell him about Kate and her relationship with Jake. Nicole tells him how much she regrets going back, how she put the relationship she had with someone in the past before the relationship she had with someone in the present. She tells Mark that she made Kate a scrapbook of their time together, but she was scared to give it to her, and because of everything that was going on around her, she left it back at the evacuation center. After hearing this, Mark apologizes to Nicole for not talking to her, telling her that he'll go with her to try to find that scrapbook, to help Nicole take the first step in repairing her relationship with Kate and to move forward, to which Nicole agrees to. As the two walk through the halls, they stumble across a very disheveled looking Louise, and judging by how she looks, it seems like she dreamt of discovering her college application was rejected, kicking her research into overdrive. Louise explains to them how she discovered that places affected by the ruling caused the double slit experiment to become unnatural, calling them hotspots, which could be the places that cause all these hallucinations. After hearing this, Nicole and Mark bring up how they're going back to the evacuation center, a place that housed many ruling victims, offering Louise to join them, which she accepts. As they head off to the evacuation center, Mark checks in with Kathy about her other bandage, asking more about it, to which Kathy tells him that they can talk about it when he comes back from his adventure with Louise and Nicole. After seeing Mark text his best friends, Louise opens up to Mark about the dream she had, telling him that although everything in her room was as it should be, two things were off. One was the drawing of her and Sophia, with Louise telling Mark that she hasn't kept in touch with her in a long time, not since 2nd grade. The second was her college rejection letter, which worried Louise tremendously, thinking it was a bad omen. All the hard work she's put into her investigations into the anomalies and the double slit experiment was specifically done so she could get into the school she wanted. And as Mark tries to reassure her, he hears a honk from the bus, which causes him to see a flash of that truck barreling towards him. As the three reach the evacuation center, Mark and Nicole head to grab the scrapbook while Louise sets up her experiment. As she looks down at her scrapbook, Nicole realizes how many photos she has of Jake in it, realizing that once again, she was focusing on the past instead of her and Kate's friendship. Mark asks her that wasn't it loss that caused their friendship to bloom in the first place, that shared grief and understanding? Nicole tells him that yes, it was grief that helped them get close to each other, but it wasn't the only important thing about their friendship. The two open up to each other about how scared they were to tell the other how they felt, to put their hearts on the line in fear of getting hurt. But they both agree to continue trying to be better. But as they talk, Louise suddenly calls both of them down, with panic in her voice. As the two reach Louise, they see the laser in the double slit experiment going absolutely crazy, and as they try to figure out what's going on, Louise turns to static, vanishing before them. Then Nicole, and then Mark. We're then thrown back to the events of Louise's dream, with her sitting at the table with her mom and sister, nervous and disappointed about bringing up the news of her failure to them. In the background, we can see the wall covered in her family's awards, the medals, the ribbons, and the graduation photos. It's clear how important success is to Louise's family. Her mom and sister then look at her, asking her what the letter said, with Louise's face going dark. We then cut to Nicole backstage, right before she has to go and play her big performance, with her mom trying to reassure her, telling Nicole that maybe Jake was just sick, with Nicole distraught, telling her mom that he said he'd be there. After hearing this, Nicole's mom tells her that in life, sometimes things work out, and sometimes they don't, and that all we can really do is just play along, to roll with the punches, to to accept what's happening and continue with your life. And then we cut to Mark, with tears in his eyes from the news about his mom, being snapped out of his daze by Rydell, telling Mark that Kathy was gone and they had to find her. As Rydell was telling Mark how long she'd been missing for, Mark and the others were snapped back to the evacuation center. As Nicole and Luis try to leave the center, Mark realizes they left the scrapbook, causing him to run back in, transporting him to the forest, the same place where he ran after Kath during prom. As he runs, he thinks back to himself about his mom, how he didn't mean what he said and how he takes all of it back. And as he reconvenes with Rydell, he asks him to just take a minute and stop. As Rydell yells at him and asks why, Mark tells him that he doesn't understand and tries to bring up his mom, with Rydell cutting him off and telling him that he knows his mom's coming home today, questioning why Mark was talking about it now, when in the past he acted like he didn't give a damn. And before Mark could answer, he's back, running out with the scrapbook to reconvene with the others. As the three of them head home, Luis theorizes that what happened to them happened to Jessica and Ryan, and as they get picked up by Luis's mom, it's revealed why Luis is so reclusive with her work. We can see the expectations her mother has on her because of her sister's successes, and the reason behind her reluctance to ask for help, wanting her achievements to be done on her own like her mom and sisters. And once they get home safe, at school, Mark and Nicole head over to meet with Kate in order to give her the scrapbook. As Nicole goes over to Kate, the scrapbook in hand, Mark thinks to himself about it all. He questions if Kate will listen, forgive, or understand Nicole despite everything that's happened. But he knows that no matter what, Nicole's trying. She's been trying, even when he started avoiding her. He thinks back to Kath, the scene shifting to her opening up to Mark and Rydell about her abuse. He thinks about how she was right about talking. It didn't make things worse, but he also doesn't know if it made things better. The scene then shifts again to Mark on the phone, clearly talking to his dad about what happened with his mom, with the anger on his face as he finishes the call, making it clear that his dad didn't take it very well. With Mark thinking about how there is just so much you can't control in another person's head, whether they'll take it well or if they won't. But at least they're all trying, even when it's hard. Throughout Mark's speech, we see Rydell finally got a production studio to take his short film, making Kathy the star of it. We see Luis opening up to her sister about something, with her sister smiling warmly at her. We see Mark, Luis, and Nicole working on the double slit experiment together. We see Nicole and Kate finally becoming friends again. And as all of this plays out, Mark says that all a person can really do in the end is try. This was a scene that impacted me heavily when I first saw it, because I didn't realize how true it actually is. During their piano practice, the night Mark and Nicole spoke to each other on the roof, she told him that she wished sincerity was easier. But I believe that the difficulty of sincerity is what makes it so beautiful. As people, we all have these walls that we put around ourselves. They're perfectly natural, used to make sure we aren't hurt. But with these walls comes the fear of getting hurt. When there's a problem, there's that feeling of not wanting to talk about it or bottling it up, afraid of what could happen when you open up. We never know what another person is thinking, nor can we control what they think, meaning that when you lower those walls for someone else, there's that fear that they might hurt you. If I can just get personal for a moment, I've been in Mark's place before when he was talking to his father, concerned for the pain they were causing themselves for how they were thinking, only for the person you were concerned for to get angry at you, to bring up their walls so high that you can't ever reach them no matter how much you wanted to. But even with these walls and the fear of getting hurt, we as humans continue to try and connect with one another even with the unknown between us. Because in the end, even if we get hurt, we have the solace of knowing that we tried. We push past fear and take steps out of our comfort zone, and even if it hurts, we try. Because despite the unknown, we want to try. We want to understand. We want to love each other. Things look like they're going pretty well. Rydell finally got the funding and crew that he wanted, Luis is finally opening up to her sister, Kathy found a passion in acting, and Luis and Kate have become friends. As Mark takes a good look at the double slit experiment he made, he texts Luis and Nicole and says that everything looks good on his end. But as he leaves, things begin to get weird, almost as if it's a bad omen. We are once again sent to the prom. When Mark arrives, he and Louise talk about how despite the lack of anomalies occurring as of late, he can't shake the feeling that something's off. When he goes inside, he meets up with Rydell and Kathy, and we finally get to see Rydell's prom outfit. Now the main thing I want to focus on is the mask. Rydell is wearing half of the comedy mask, which is one of the two masks that originate in ancient Greek theater, which correlate with Rydell's goals of creating a film. The Greek comedy mask is also attributed to the Greek muse Thalia, whose name means to flourish, which Rydell was able to do with the help of those who care about him. As the three friends talk about how successful they were with their endeavors, Rydell points out that Nicole just arrived. Because Mark and Nicole have a lot more of a friendship bond instead of a romantic one this time around, the two head over to get their picture taken together instead of a romantic dance and a kiss. As they talk, Mark asks about their relationship and the place they're both in right now, with Nicole telling Mark that they could talk about it during their last dance of the night, which is a bit concerning after what happened during the other last dance of the night. As Mark and Nicole take their photo together, all Mark could think about are those words, last dance. Throughout the night, more and more things take him back to the memories from before. The moment he found Kathy's confession on the CD, the details of how bad her home life was were flashing in his mind, realizing that she vanished from prom. As Mark leaves the building to look for her, he spots Kathy talking with her parents, apologizing to them for leaving the house, saying that she just wanted to go to prom. And surprisingly, her parents seem actually relaxed, trying to actually talk to her. As Mark calls out to her, he tells her that he has a bad feeling about something, with Kathy telling Mark that her parents don't seem angry and that they just want to talk, telling Mark that she'll be okay and leaving. As Mark stands there, Louise and Nicole come outside, asking what was wrong, and as Mark tells him about the memory anomalies, they realize that something strange is happening, causing Mark to run after Kath, afraid of what might happen. As Mark runs to find her, the anomalies start getting stronger, and as Mark runs, he's sent back to the moment where his mom was telling him that she was leaving, with Mark getting angry at her departure. As Mark runs, the anomalies get worse, the graffiti on the walls next to him saying, "Your fault."
As he heads into a construction site, he flashes back again to when he told his mom that if she was leaving, she should never come back.
While Mark runs, Louise and Nicole try to call out to him, to warn him about the anomalies, but to no avail. Mark is then sent back to when he was in the forest with Rydell when they were looking for Kath, with Rydell asking Mark why he cares about his mom all of a sudden, believing that she was heading home already. He tells Mark to just go home while he looks for Kath himself. As Mark keeps running, thinking to himself about how he didn't mean any of the things he said to his mom, he's sent back to the white void. The sound of his mother's voice calling out to him, telling Mark that he has to save her, to save Kathy.
As he finds her again, he asks her if he really said those things, with his mom telling him that even if he did, it was okay. He was so young and he couldn't have known better.
She once again brings up the bowl of food, the one he didn't finish, causing him to feel guilty for days, with Mark telling her that he didn't want to hear any of her metaphors. She tells Mark that even though he's come a long way, he still has a lot to learn, saying how things are getting worse and she can't keep doing this, with Mark asking for her to tell him what to do. His mom tells him that there's just some things he has to figure out on his own,
and he needs to look closely and forward.
As he begs his mom not to leave, the vision ends once again, with Mark continuing to run. And as he phases in and out of reality, he stops, too tired to go on. And when Nicole and Louise look at the laser, they realize that it's waxing and waning, growing big and then growing small. After seeing this chance, Louise and Nicole run after Mark. And while they run, Mark finally finds Kathy.
But when he calls out to her, instead of being overjoyed to see him like she was last time, this time she was just scared and confused.
As Mark asks her why she was out here, Kathy tells him that he scared her. But suddenly the ground starts shaking again,
with Kathy suddenly starting to turn into static. Simultaneously, Nicole watches in horror as a large object falls towards Louise. After seeing this, Mark and Nicole run after their friends, desperately trying to save them. But in the end, both of them were too late.
As Mark stands in the middle of the street alone, he desperately calls out, telling himself that Kathy would come back just like he did. But she never did. Yet again, she was gone. In the aftermath, the school holds a memorial for Luis, with everyone apologizing to Mark for his loss. Kate even thanks Mark for proving her wrong about Nicole, for taking such a risk and helping them become close again. And as Mark talks to Nicole, she tells him about how they went after him, with Mark blaming himself for all of it. But despite how much he blamed himself, Luis's sister thanked him for being Luis's friend throughout it all. After the funeral, it's shown that Mark's dad has returned home, cleaning off Maria's old piano. As he tries to talk to his son, Mark yells at him. He's angry that Kathy's gone missing, Luis is dead, and that his father keeps denying his mother's death. As his dad tries to change the subject, Mark tells him to stop lying to himself. After hearing this, Mark's dad confesses that he needs to keep believing, and when Mark told him to stop lying to himself for the first time, he was hurt by it. But even so, he felt like he heard it before it even came out of his mouth. And as he tells Mark he doesn't know if he can, Mark's eyes well up with tears, telling him that he has to. We then get to Rydell's short film, the one that Kathy starred in, and as the credits roll, Rydell says that it isn't right. That Kathy was supposed to be there with them celebrating, and that without her, all of it felt stupid. He put his heart and soul into making this film. He fought to find a producer. He spent months trying to find the right inspiration, but after Kathy's disappearance, without her to be there with them, it was all just nothing. He begs Mark to tell him what happened. He knew the research he was doing with Luis, so he must have some answers. But despite having the knowledge of what happened, Mark wouldn't tell him. The person that Rydell opened up to the most about what was troubling him and his struggles. He denied him a chance to try to understand because Mark was afraid that Rydell wouldn't, fearing the sheer incredulousness of it all would cause Rydell to think he was lying, causing him to get even more angry.
Even more, Mark must have remembered those visions of Rydell while he was running. How angry he was at Mark when they were looking for Kathy, with the fear of that anger causing him not to open up.
After getting denied an explanation, Rydell left, with Kathy's brother Andrew walking in and sitting next to Mark. He tells Mark that at a red light, Kathy decided to get out of the car and run, telling him that she looked overwhelmed. Mark responds that of course she was overwhelmed, because she was afraid, believing that it was because of her parents. But Andrew tells him that no, Kathy's parents were actually being very careful with her, trying to fix their relationship, to talk to her. Andrew tells Mark that he doesn't know their family, telling Mark that she kept looking down at her phone, like she was expecting some kind of text or call, believing Mark had something to do with it. As Mark sits there, taking it all in, he realizes something horrible. That everything that happened, it was all his fault. He blamed himself for what happened with his mother, when he told her to leave and never come back.
He blames himself for what happened to Luis, as if he didn't run off, she wouldn't have been crushed underneath that rubble.
And finally, he blames himself for what happened to Kathy. He was so afraid that something bad was gonna happen to her. He thought her parents were gonna hurt her. He thought she was going to die. But her parents were just trying to mend their relationship. Everything was fine. But he misunderstood what was happening, and because of that misunderstanding, she ended up running away, disappearing right in front of him. And in his eyes, everything that happened with Kathy and Luis was his fault. We then cut to Mark at the Hillstop Cafe, exhausted with bags in his eyes, desperately trying to get fluctuations, to get Kathy back, but to no avail. Nicole visits him, telling Mark how Luis's discoveries changed quantum mechanics forever, and that her family was proud of her. As Mark dismisses her, she asks Mark what he's trying to accomplish, with him responding he just wants to bring them back. Even if there's the smallest chance of it happening, he has to try. He then asks Nicole that if it was Jake missing, wouldn't she put everything on the line just for the chance to get him back? After hearing this, Nicole tears up, telling Mark that she accepted that Jake's gone, but she tells him that she's here, their friends at the piano club are here, Rydell's here, and most importantly of all, he was here. Despite her words, Mark ignores her, desperate to try to get his best friend back, and after seeing this dismissal, Nicole begins to cry. She tells Mark about what her mom said to her once. When you grow up, you realize not everything's gonna work out, and when that happens, all you can do is just play along. She tells Mark that she didn't understand what she meant, until it happened to her all over again. And for the second time in her life, Nicole lost her best friend. She then walks off to leave Mark with his grief, his pain, his denial, and as he buries himself in his work, a black butterfly appears on his hand, and everything goes black. This was an act full of twists and turns, and highs and lows. And while Act 1 was more focused on understanding, family, and Mark and Nicole's growing relationship, Act 2 was more focused on Mark's friendships, communication, and most of all, trying. If we look at the events throughout Act 2 as a whole, before the prom, this act was a lot happier and positive than the first. Although Mark's relationship with Nicole wasn't a romantic one this time around, they still ended up becoming close friends, with Mark even helping her reconcile with Kate. His relationship with Rydell and Kathy was as strong as ever, with the trio all helping one another find their passions and opening up about their pain. Even Luis, who started off this act being cold to Mark, ended up becoming his friend as well. It's also extremely interesting to see how Mark handles the acceptance stage of his mother's passing. Although he's finally accepted Maria's death, he still has a long way to go before he can finally finish grieving. Being in such denial and lying to himself for so long caused Mark to get extremely angry and emotional when he's being lied to. It's what caused him to shy away from Nicole and lash out at Kathy when she told him nothing bad was going on in her life. After accepting what happened, he was able to look back at himself, seeing the lies he was living with for so long, realizing how much they hurt him. He saw how the lies were hurting his father, wanting to help him come to terms with that loss as well. But his father refused, telling Mark that he had to believe his mom was still out there. His father was clinging on to hope for dear life to the point where it became stubbornness. Mark understood that acceptance was hard. He had to go through that pain, but watching someone you love hurt themselves because they're too scared to come to terms with that grief hurt him even more. In that same vein, however, although Mark got angry at Kathy for not talking to him about her problems, questioning if she even trusted him, he himself wouldn't talk to Nicole about what was troubling him. He was so scared to open up because he had no idea how she was gonna react, and that unknown kept him locked in place. Eventually, when he finally talked to Nicole and the two reconciled, he questioned whether or not talking actually made things better, knowing the only thing you can do is try. Kathy talked to Mark and Rydell about her pain, Luis talked to her sister about her research, and Nicole talked to Kate about moving forward and mending their relationship, and each of them were better off for opening up. While not shown, I believe that Kathy's talk with Mark and Rydell, with her finally letting them in, allowed for her to release some of that pent-up anger and pain inside of her, allowing her and her parents' relationship to become less strained and volatile, which helped them take some steps into becoming better. Luis was able to share her research with someone in her family, with Luis's sister looking proud of her, and finally, Nicole and Kate talking helped mend their relationship and finally started becoming friends again. The only one that didn't benefit from talking was Mark, with him and his dad getting angry and hanging up on each other. I believe that because trying to talk with someone close to him failed, the pain from that interaction caused him not to open up to Rydell when he asked Mark what happened to Kathy. In the end, he couldn't open up about what happened. He did exactly what Kathy did, the thing that made him so angry. In the end, one misunderstanding caused Mark to blame himself for everything that happened. In Mark's head, it was all his fault. It's what causes him to never let it go, continuing on the research to try to find some way to bring Kathy back, to fix everything. And in a sad, tragic way, Mark becomes his father, unable to move past his grief, continuing to hold on to hope until the point of it becoming stubbornness. And when Nicole asks him to stop, to focus on what they have now, with plenty of their friends still around to help him get through it, Mark asks her that if it was Jake who went missing, wouldn't she be in his shoes? Wouldn't she do all that she can for even the slightest chance at getting him back? But what Mark didn't remember was that Nicole already tried that. She went back to her hometown with Kate, desperate to find anything that could tell her what happened to Jake. She was so focused on finding something that she had no idea how dangerous it was to be there. Nicole in the end realized the danger she not only put herself in, but Kate as well. She realized how much she was hurting Kate, putting a relationship in the past above one in the present. It was because of Kate that caused her to accept Jake's death and try to move forward. But in her eyes, it was all happening again. Like her, Mark was stuck in the past, trying to find some way to bring Kathy back, to fix things even though he couldn't. And because of his stubbornness, he was hurting the people around him, pushing them away from a relationship in the past. In a way, Mark and Nicole both saw the lowest versions of themselves in each other. Mark, a man who finally pulled himself out of his life of lies, believed that the person who was supposed to help him move forward was lying to him. And Nicole, who damaged her relationships in the present because she was so stuck on the past, which is exactly what Mark was doing now, all because of one simple misunderstanding, with Mark believing he had to be the one to save Kathy. With one last act to go, let's move forward. As we open up the final act of the game, we see Mark back on his way to the train, thinking to himself that for some reason, he needs to find Louise. As he makes his way to the train station, the environment around him seems to be getting worse. There are people shouting in the street about repentance, homeless people on the ground, more trash on the sidewalks, and the train is only running at half capacity. As Mark gets to school, he talks to Ryan about what's been going on, with Ryan mentioning to Mark that the gym he's supposed to play basketball at has been destroyed for months because of the ruling, meaning this time around, the ruling hit closer to Mark's home than before, which explains why there's a lot more damage and debris around. As he and his group present their slides, Mark can't help feel like there was something he was supposed to tell both Kathy and Louise, with Louise confirming that things have been feeling off as well. After his presentation, Mark once again tries to talk to Jessica, asking her if she's been feeling strange lately, with her telling him no. As Mark walks through his school, we can notice some changes throughout it. The poster for prom night was replaced by one asking for donations to help people who lost their homes in the ruling. The walls around the school are slightly more cracked, and the machines around the school have been breaking. As Mark meets up with Kathy, he tells her how good it is to see her, with Kathy being confused by this, telling him that he saw her yesterday. As they talk, the normal happy-sounding guitar that plays during their talks at school has gotten slower and deeper. As he talks with Kathy and Rydell, they both tell him that they haven't been experiencing anything weird with their memories. Just then, Louise comes by and asks to speak with Mark, telling him about the memory anomalies. Mark tells her that whatever they're feeling seems to be more than just deja vu, like they've actually lived through these moments. He then sees Sophia walking by, asking if she's Louise's friend, with her denying it. It seems like although Mark and Louise both have some issues with their memory, Mark's ability to see these memories is a lot stronger than Louise's. He then tells Louise that he knows her desire to study these anomalies was to help her get into university, prompting Louise to start believing him. He tells her that he feels like there's just one last thing he needs to find, to prove that there's something more to these memories than just deja vu, with her telling him that they'll talk later and for Mark to find what he's looking for. As Mark sits at home on his piano, trying to figure out what he's looking for, he gets a vision of Nicole with her face out of frame, her back turned from him, sitting in that giant white void. She's painting a poster just like the day they first met. The painting on the canvas being a black void with strange patterns of butterflies and weird white trees. As Mark is transported to the white void, he runs toward Nicole, but stops after hearing his mother playing the piano, with her back turned from him just like the night she told him she needed to leave. He runs toward her this time, but stops, turning around and seeing Kathy crying, the only one of the three whose face was actually visible, from the night she was hit by that truck. If Mark chooses to run after Kathy, no matter how hard he runs, he can't help but look back, with Nicole and Maria looking back at him. And as he runs closer and closer towards Kathy, the smile of relief at seeing Mark growing bigger and bigger, he snaps out of his vision, frustrated that every time he's a slight reach away, he always ends up losing what he's after, trying desperately to find out what he's missing. As he scrolls through his phone in bed, he sees a post from a teacher at Liamson, welcoming Nicole and Kate to their school. As he sees Nicole's name, Mark can't help feel like it's familiar. As he looks further into her profile, recognizing her face, he tries to text her. As he keeps trying to come up with a message to send, she sends one first, recognizing him. And as he looks at the text she sent him, he suddenly turns to static and vanishes. Suddenly, Mark reappears, with it being morning and his room being a lot more damaged than before. As he looks at his calendar, he realizes that the day reset. As he tries to process what's happening, Mark gets a text from Nicole, asking who he is and if he felt time reset again. Mark tells Nicole to meet him at the school science room, as there is someone there who can help them find out what's going on. After yet another presentation, Mark hangs out with Kathy and Ryan, who seems to have taken Rydell's place as their third friend this time around. We can see the school looking a lot more run down and hear the usually peaceful guitar playing in the background becoming a lot more out of tune and unsettling. As Mark brings up Louise, Ryan and Kathy tell Mark that she's been missing for quite some time, with her disappearance being the reason the school's lab hasn't been touched in ages. Ryan tells Mark that before she went missing, Louise was studying supernatural occurrences at different locations. As Mark leaves his friends to search around the school's lab, he comes across Louise's old notes, questioning what she was doing and why her studies looked so familiar. As he puts together her map of all the different hotspots these anomalies were occurring in, he notices Hillstop Cafe as one of them, which causes everything he's ever experienced with Louise to come flooding back to him. Their work together, what they've been through, and even her disappearance. After getting those memories back, he sets up the double slit experiment, with nothing out of the ordinary happening to the laser. Suddenly, it begins to go crazy, and as Mark looks up, he sees Nicole looking right at him. And as he looks into her eyes, he remembers everything they've done together, everything that they went through. We even get to see Mark propose to Nicole, something we never actually got to see in the first part of the game. And as their memories come flooding back, they begin to blush. When I say they remember everything, I mean they remember everything. They remember how they fell in love, how they got married, and how they started their lives together despite being only 15 at this current moment. And as they talk about what's going on, Nicole tells Mark she seems to be the only person who feels the days restarting, and in order to help her remember Louise's research, he shows Nicole her memorial photo, causing the memories to come flooding back. They realize that each of these days restarting and the memories they have were all caused by alternate versions of themselves, with each time they shift into an alternate reality causing random things to change around, so it's never the same twice. They conclude that they need to get to a reality where Louise is alive so they can get a proper explanation. And as the two wait for reality to restart again, Mark asks Nicole how she's so sure they'll remember each other next time, with Nicole responding that she isn't. But she knows that right now, Mark is the only one she can count on. They were in this together. They've always been. God, even when the world is breaking around them, these two find some way to be adorable together. Anyways, as the two shake hands, reality resets once more. And as Mark comes to, the world around him seems to be getting worse. But thankfully, Nicole retains her memories, with the two agreeing to meet at the lab to find Louise. As Mark makes his way to the train, he gets a text from Sophia this time, telling Mark that Louise went off to one of the hotspots she's always talking about and won't make it to the presentation. As Mark searches for Louise, we cut to Nicole, taking in her surroundings to see what her life is like in this reality. She sees a cut open stuffed animal with a stitching tool next to it, thinking about how even in this reality, she was always trying to find distractions for her grief. Her room had posters telling her how today was going to be a new day and life will be so much better, superficial ways to try to get her to move on. She then looks at a box of piano notes on the top of her shelf, and she thinks to herself that maybe it's because of the piano that she keeps looking for him, and why they keep finding each other. She tells herself that if there's anything good that comes out of these resets, it's the fact that she gets a fresh start, and this time she won't run away anymore. When she looks at the notes, it's clear that she believes that the reason she keeps looking for him, Jake, is because of the piano, something she attributes to her memory of him. But it's also the reason why they, her and Mark, keep finding one another. She knows what she has to do this time, and with Mark, they'll find a way to get to the bottom of it all. As she heads downstairs, she looks at a photo of her and Jake, admitting to herself that she didn't want to face his disappearance head on, and even though he disappeared, she knows that he would have wanted her to keep playing. And as she plays the song Memories on the piano, her mom comes down and is delighted that Nicole's playing again. And when Nicole tells her mom that she wants to apologize to Kate, it's revealed that in this reality, Kate has already passed away, with her mom telling her that it wasn't her fault, it was because of the earthquake. After hearing this, it's quite possible that in this reality, Nicole wanted to go back to her and Kate's hometown to try to find any clues on what happened to Jake. And even though Kate was reluctant to go, she caved and followed Nicole. And because of how unstable it all was, a sudden earthquake caused the buildings to topple, resulting in Kate's death. Meanwhile, Mark travels to Hillstop Cafe and talks to Louise, and when he tells her he already knows about her research, she gets defensive, backing away and telling Mark that he was trying to steal her only chance at getting into her dream school. Mark calms her down, telling her he's not trying to compete with her, explaining what was happening. He tells her that he feels like he's lived 100 different lifetimes, but every single time the day resets, it seems like the ruling is getting worse and worse, telling Louise that there are timelines where she succeeds in her research, changing quantum mechanics entirely. And after hearing this, Louise begins to pack up, telling Mark that despite her quantum theories and research, she feels like she doesn't have the data needed to stop what was happening, only the proof that it was occurring in the first place. Telling Mark that even though she was correct in her theories about quantum mechanics, she doesn't feel anything from the success, which prompts Mark to get a flashback about his mom, remembering how even though he wanted to play the piano to cope with her death, it didn't make him feel any different either. As he snaps back to reality, Nicole arrives at the cafe, causing Louise's double-slit experiment to go crazy, causing Louise to conclude that when the two of them see each other, they catch themselves in a form of quantum entanglement because their waves are so similar, resulting in everything around them violently collapsing. In short, Louise tells them not to be near one another as it results in the world around them resetting and becoming worse, leaving them to think it over. As the two walk down the street late at night together, they talk about what they have to do. In the background, they pass dozens of establishments closed down because of the ruling, a testament to how bad the world's getting because of these resets. As they come across a tree and decide to carve into it in order to leave something behind, it leads to them talking about the day they first met, when they worked together on their posters and how they collided into each other. Even now, after everything they went through together, they still have time to bicker about who was in the wrong. As they reach a bridge, Mark asks Nicole if she's glad they won't have to keep colliding into each other over and over again. And as they stare at one another, with a massive lamp pole in the middle of the screen indicating how they need to be apart, Nicole tells Mark that she'd gladly crash into him over and over again. They agree that all these memories they saw had to be theirs. Nicole tells him that there's no way she can just forget about him. After all they've been through, lifetimes of pain, love, and growth, they were married for God's sakes. She then walks forward, wrapping her arms around him, with Mark asking if they could hold each other just for a little bit longer. As they look at each other with tears in their eyes, Mark thanks Nicole for being the best piano teacher he could ask for, and Nicole tells Mark thank you for all of it, for everything they got to experience together. And as they finally split apart, Nicole tells Mark that he knows the rest, with him agreeing, with the duo finally leaving in opposite directions. Oh my god, my heart cannot take these two together. The fact that these two remember everything that happened between them and still manage to split up is some insane willpower. I don't think I would be able to leave the person I end up with in hundreds of alternate realities. What's even worse is what they're trying to do. What they feel like they need to do is exactly what they've been doing after they lost the people they loved. Just go about their everyday lives trying to ignore the fact that their hearts are dying inside, with them being unable to interact with the one person they love and understand above all else. The person who helped them get through their initial grief in the first place. Anyways, let's keep moving, and I will be getting my tissues because I know I'm gonna bawl my eyes out pretty soon. As soon as Mark and Nicole separate, reality resets once again, with Mark remembering that they need to avoid each other now. And as he looks down at his piano books, he thinks to himself about how he was still trying to reach her. I believe when he looks down at those books, he's referring to his mother, but I also wouldn't doubt he's thinking about Nicole, because that is his straight up wife. Once again, the reset seems to have made things worse, and as he tries to live life normally, he gets a text from Kath, saying that she hurt her wrist and asks Mark to visit her in the hospital. We then cut to Nicole, who can't help but wonder if Mark's thinking about her. Honestly, I can't blame her because that is her straight up husband. Anyways, Nicole tells her mom that she wants to transfer schools and apologize to Kate, with her mom telling her that she can visit Kate in the hospital as she was just transferred there. You can probably guess where this is going. As Mark visits Kathy, he questions if her wrist injury was really from her slipping down some stairs as she claimed, with Kathy telling him yes. As Rydell arrives and talks with Kathy, the stress of what he has to deal with is too much for him, causing him to leave his friends and go get some fresh air. As Nicole arrives at the hospital, she visits Kate, apologizing to her for everything. After getting an apology, instead of relief or even indifference, Kate looks angry. As Nicole apologizes for being stuck in the past, Kate asks what she's doing. She tells Nicole that they haven't spoken in a long time. She tells Nicole that she needs to get some fresh air, causing her to get up and walk out of the room. As Nicole follows her and apologizes more, Kate tells her to just stop. She tells Nicole that it was all just too much, upset that she didn't even visit her in the hospital after the earthquake, saying how she knew Nicole wouldn't give up on Jake, and she thought Nicole wouldn't give up on her too. As Nicole turns around expecting to see Kate, she suddenly comes face to face with Mark. And as they lock eyes, they turn to static and everything around them changes. Mark looks around, the environment looking very similar to what he saw in Act 1 at the hospital. As Mark walks around the ruined halls, he sees an old robot his father built for him, and his mother's embroideries. As Nicole walks through the same hallway, she's unable to see Mark, but finds her scrapbook of Kate and Jake floating near her. As the duo both hear the person they lost call out to them, they run forward, seeing their loved one glowing in ethereal light, walking away from them as Mark and Nicole try to run after them. As Mark watches his mother vanish before him, he spots a small butterfly headpiece on the ground, realizing it's Kathy's. He's then transported back to the night of the prom, hearing the honking of a truck's horn as he runs forward, trying to reach out to Kathy as she stands in the road, being transported away right before their hands touch. He's then transported to a classroom, watching Kathy as she looks at a massive bruise on her arm. A bruise most definitely caused by her family. He's then sent back to the forest, seeing his best friend in the woods crying alone, and again watching as a massive branch crushes her. In his grief and panic, Mark begins to be rapidly transported throughout reality. Each time it's a reaction to what he sees happen to his best friend. And while we can't see everything surrounding Mark when he jumps through reality, we can make some assumptions. We can see Mark being transported to the forest on prom night, the top of a high building, some abandoned looking area, his own home, a deep orange forest that could indicate a fire, and a few more, with each place housing some kind of event that caused Kathy great pain and even death. After forcing himself to take in what's around him, Mark gets a determined look on his face, and as he rushes forward trying to save Kathy from that truck yet again, the scene cuts to black. Suddenly, Mark collides into Kathy, the two falling over in front of that legally distinct 7-Eleven they go to together. As Kathy asks why he did that, Mark looks at her, scared, desperate, and confused, telling her that he had to do something. After hearing this, Kathy asks him if this is because of the earthquake drill they had, holding out her hand to help him get up. She tells him he's already ducked and covered, and now it's time to hold on, taking his hand and helping him get up. Mark apologizes for not paying enough attention, telling Kathy that he wishes he could talk to someone who knows more, with Kathy offering herself up and Mark declining. Kathy tells Mark she knows he's been missing his parents and offers for them to talk. Mark hears her words and gets a determined look on his face, telling Kathy that he promises he'll fix everything. And as he makes his way to the school lab once more, he tells Nicole to meet him there, despite Luis's warnings. And as he looks through her old notes, Mark realizes that whenever he and Nicole meet up at a hotspot, them locking eyes causes the hotspot to vanish when reality shifts, with the hospital and Hillstop Cafe already gone. He and Nicole meet up at another one of these hotspots called Bagong Tahanan. with Mark explaining to her his discovery, and as they lock eyes with each other, the world around them begins to shake, with the both of them struggling to maintain eye contact as some sort of force is trying to make them look away. And suddenly, everything goes black, and Mark and Nicole find themselves in a strange limbo-like plane of reality, with items from both of their lives floating around them. We see various piano sheet books floating about, Nicole's scrapbook, Mark's toy planes, and the stuffed animal Mark won for Nicole at the fair. As Mark looks around, he hears a voice he's never heard before, and when he walks forward, he sees that it's Jake, thanking a younger Nicole and her mother for dinner, telling them that he had to go home with a nervous look on his face, telling Nicole that he had to help his dad with something. Nicole, on the other hand, sees a vision of a younger Mark at the table with his mother, ignoring his food while Maria tries to tell him that they'll be back home for Christmas, with Mark angrily telling her that he wasn't hungry and walking away. It's clear that for some reason, Mark's seeing Nicole's memories and vice versa. As Mark comes to, he's back at his house, the area around him looking run down and destroyed, with the ruling getting closer and closer to hitting Mark's hometown. And as he checks his school's group chat, it's revealed that even school is shut down because of the earthquakes. Kathy then texts Mark that Rydell's been feeling down lately and asks if they should go visit him, with Mark telling Kathy to stay home for her own safety. And when I saw Mark text this to her, my blood actually went cold. I know he was worried about what was gonna happen to her after everything he's seen, but he was asking her to do the one thing that she hates the most, to stay with the people who abuse her. As Nicole texts him that the hotspot is gone, she tells Mark that things seem to be getting even worse every time they remove a hotspot, with Mark telling her that they have no choice. Nicole then asks Mark if he wants to go to the hotspot on the cliffside, the place where Mark watched Kathy get hit by that truck, with Mark telling her not yet, refusing to go into further detail. As Mark heads to the bus stop, he takes in his surroundings, looking at all the soldiers and refugees around him. He stares at them, wondering if he and Nicole were the only ones who knew of the hundreds of lifetimes they've lived, telling himself that it all felt so real, that he wants to believe that it was him who lived through all of it and not an alternate version of himself. But at the same time, looking at the people scared and suffering, he begins to realize the severity of what he and Nicole are doing. He then gets another text from Kathy, pleading for him to come back, begging for him not to leave, with him lying and telling her that he was at the mayor's office getting rations, refusing to tell his best friend what was going on even though she was begging him to talk to her, responding that he'll fix everything, he just doesn't want to see her getting hurt again. As Mark and Nicole head over to the old evacuation center, she tells him that the last collapse felt a lot stronger than before, worried that they might not be able to do it this time, with Mark telling Nicole that they had to try. Even if they fail to fix it, they'll know that they tried. Nicole then opens up to Mark about how before they met up, she tried to apologize to Kate once again to no avail, worried that if they don't fix things, Kate will never forgive her. Mark then opens up to Nicole about Kathy, telling her about all the times he watched her die and that they need to stop it. As the two stare at one another, the force of their eye contact makes Nicole collapse to the ground. And as the two fight to keep eye contact, they're sent into another limbo. This time, Mark sees Jake crying on his knees, begging God to make it stop, with what he's witnessing being unclear. He sees Nicole and Jake pulling pranks together, his fear replaced by happiness as he spends time with his best friend. And then he sees Kate asking Jake, who was crying on the floor, if he wants to sneak over to Nicole's house. Mark then sees a moment where Nicole, angry at not being able to play the piano right, smashes her fingers on the keys, making loud noises, which causes Jake to freak out, asking Nicole not to hurt the piano. It's a clear indicator that Jake and Kate live in a household full of constant fighting and yelling, with his crying earlier being caused by yet another one of his parents' fights. And when he saw Nicole's treatment of her piano, it triggered his trauma. It also makes sense why he's such a prankster with Nicole. Not only does he get to do more things with his best friend, but it must feel like his only chance to let loose and act out, as at home, he must have to walk on eggshells due to his parents. We then cut to Nicole, who watches Mark's parents get their flights ready, with Maria trying to surprise Mark with a trip to the amusement park despite their troubling finances. Despite the surprise, Mark yells at her that it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact that she's leaving. As reality resets once again, things have gotten worse. Mark is outside his house yet again, with Kathy walking up to him. He tries to give a brief and quick explanation to Kathy about what he's seen, but it just leaves her more confused. Mark then looks down at the bag of cookies in her hand, taking him back to the night he confessed to her about what happened to his mother, and what caused Kathy to open up about her trauma in the first place. Mark tells Kathy that they're running out of time and that he needs to leave, causing Kathy to beg to go with him. He looks at her, seeing more bandages on her face, which could be because the ruling's close proximity to their hometown caused Kathy's parents even more stress and led to more abuse. Despite knowing how bad it was getting, Mark was determined, believing that it would all be over soon, and no matter how much Kathy pleaded to go with him, Mark runs off, promising that he'll fix things. As he leaves for the next hotspot, Kathy texts him that even though life is hard, they still have each other. It causes Mark to think about his mom, wishing he could talk to her one last time. As Mark reaches Nicole's old hometown, he suddenly runs into Kate, and as Nicole calls out to him and the two begin to stare at one another, she gets distracted when she sees Kate standing right behind him. It causes Nicole to break concentration and start arguing with her, asking her why she was here when she was the one who kept trying to push Nicole to move on. Nicole screams at Kate that she's tried again and again through so many different realities to apologize, telling Kate that she has no idea how she feels. And despite their intense argument, with anger and emotion heavy in the air, Kate apologizes to Nicole and reality resets once again. When Mark awakens, things have gotten so bad to the point where he and his friends are living at their school, which has been turned into a refugee center. Due to how bad everything's gotten, Mark is unable to get any Wi-Fi, meaning he can't contact Nicole, so he ends up looking for Louise, finding her at the top of the school. Mark opens up to her about how he's been through alternate realities, apologizing to her, because despite all the time they spent together, it was all just done for the sake of trying to uncover what was happening. They never truly got to become friends with one another. Louise tells Mark that despite all the bad that's happening, there's actually some good too. Kathy and her brother are close, Mark's dad was home, and Louise and Mark were actually really good friends. She also tells him that despite all the death and damage, things were actually starting to look up and redevelopment could start again. She tells Mark that God doesn't play dice, something that Albert Einstein once said, with him believing that the world was non-probabilistic, that things simply don't happen at random, and that everything has some sort of fundamental law, that there's always a reason for everything. As Louise says this, she tells Mark that even though Einstein believed that, no matter what was thrown their way, no matter how seemingly random it was, they managed to get through it, giving Mark a pass that lets him stay out past curfew. As Mark walks away, he thinks about how despite the world around him seeming bleak, there was new hope coming through. But despite this hope, he knew Nicole was waiting for him, and they had to keep going, to fix everything. But then Mark talks to his dad, and in this reality, Paolo Borja finally accepted that Maria was gone. He tells Mark how long he was in denial, but he had to give himself a slap into reality when they lost their home. He tells Mark that even though it hurt, in the end, it felt good to finally be free of his denial. He tells Mark that now, he'll never leave his loved ones all alone again. And as Mark looks at his phone, he tells himself that he can't leave the ones he loves all alone either, heading over to the last hotspot. As Mark makes his way up the mountain, he tells himself that after this, everything will be over. He can finally bring things back to normal. As Mark walks further and further up to the place he saw Kathy die, the memories flash into his mind, causing him to fall. And as he tries to get up, his stomach drops as he sees Kathy standing on the other end of the road, who followed him when he snuck out. Mark desperately tells her to stay where she is, but she doesn't listen, running over to her distressed best friend, and suddenly, she vanishes. The sheer trauma of watching his best friend vanish once again, after how hard he tried to push her away, In fear of seeing her die all over again, it pushes Mark over the edge. He vows that he'll save her, and he begins to travel throughout reality, constantly trying to rescue her. But each and every time, she ends up dying over and over and over again, just out of reach. He eventually lands in a reality where he and Kathy are hiding in a cave, with Kathy telling Mark that they need to come up with a way to get back to the refugee center. And after Mark watched his best friend die over and over again, he breaks down. He sobs, telling her he won't let her go and that he'll stop whatever's happening. He tells Kathy that he feels like it's his fault, everything that's going on, not knowing how to save her, to which Kathy asks why does he want to save her? And as Mark desperately wishes he could go back one last time, Kathy asks him, "What if it's not up to you?" before disappearing. As Kathy vanishes in front of Mark once again, it all becomes too much for him. The world around Mark slowly disappearing as he begs to go to the next reality before he's left all alone in a massive dark void. As Mark lies broken and defeated in this void, we see Nicole in the same place as well, curled up into a ball and apologizing to Mark and Kate for always messing everything up. And as the two raise their heads, unable to find one another, they begin to see the memories of Jake and Maria. Nicole saw how much Maria wanted to care and provide for Mark, watching as she avoided telling him that she'll inevitably need to leave, wanting him to be happy just for a little while longer. Nicole watches Maria ask Mark what he wants to be when he's older, wanting to work overseas to help Mark achieve whatever dream he has. When Mark asks her the same question, she tells him about her dream of becoming a musician, the dream that Mark took upon himself in so many different timelines. Meanwhile, Mark saw how bad Jake's home life was, how his dad forced him to tell him what his mom was saying and planning, causing them to fight and Jake blaming himself. He sees how Jake helped inspire Nicole to create her very own piece on the piano called Memories. How determined he was to make it to Nicole's recital even though his mom wanted to run away with him, away from his father. Nicole then watches from Maria's perspective, herself getting on stage to play the piece she made with Jake. We can see tears in young Nicole's eyes, with it being clear that this was the night that Jake was supposed to be there, and he wasn't. Nicole then sees the memories of a younger Mark, seeing how he felt when his mom finally told him that she had to leave, angry at how they never told him after so long.
It adds more context to his anger towards Nicole and Kathy for hiding things from him.
Mark then sees Nicole's memories of when Kate broke the news to her that Jake was gone, with Kate telling Nicole that she didn't even try to get to know Jake, with her not seeing any of the signs that he was in trouble. She tells Nicole that maybe if she wasn't so focused on piano, she would have been able to listen to Jake's troubles. Nicole sees a memory of Mark getting a massive present from his mom, a testament to how financially beneficial Maria leaving was. But Mark looks at it blankly, with his father asking him if he'll ever forgive her for leaving, saying that it's been years, with Mark shrugging him off and walking away. Mark watches Nicole try desperately years later to hire a private investigator to find Jake, with them declining. From the looks of things, it's clear that Nicole's search for Jake has been going on for a very long time, unable to let go of the guilt she has for not seeing the signs.
It adds context to her anger towards Mark when he said her search for Jake was for nothing, showing the years she lost trying to find him.
Nicole, in return, watches as Mark tears up anything he gets sent from his mother in the mail, still angry at her for leaving. The scene shifts to Kate, watching an older Nicole put up posters of Jake missing, angrily tearing them apart. Mark watches as Nicole and Kate argue with one another, while Nicole watches as Mark and his father Paolo argue as well. Nicole yells at Kate, asking why she doesn't care, with Kate responding that she does care. She cares about Nicole, telling her to look what she's become, what her grief and guilt turned her into. Mark, on the other hand, was still mad about his mother not coming home, with Paolo telling Mark that he knows Maria never came home like she promised, But does Mark really want his family to be like this, full of resentment and frustration that's been spanning for years now? Mark responds that maybe if his mother could keep her promises, then maybe their family wouldn't be so broken. We then shift again to Kate, who tells Nicole that she's much more than just a girl who knew Jake, a girl consumed entirely by the loss of her best friend, telling her that she's Nicole, she's someone. The memories begin to cut between each other, with Paolo demanding Mark to take back what he said about Maria, with Kate telling Nicole she didn't want her family to be broken, with both Mark and Kate expressing their feelings of abandonment and betrayal within their own families, with Mark telling his dad that there's no way he can change how he feels. Paolo and Kate tell Mark and Nicole that they can change the way they feel, and as Paolo and Kate's words cut between each other, they say together that they can, if they just forgive themselves. As Kate walks away, Mark watches a shocked Nicole stand before the ripped up posters of her lost friend, while Nicole watches as Mark stares at the TV in shock, the moment his mother's flight vanished along with her. As her memories vanish, the two sit in the black void, with Nicole asking Mark, wherever he may be, "What have we done?" Her words having a double meaning. Not only was it her expressing regret at what she and Mark ended up doing to the world, with them causing things to get worse and worse each time they reset reality, but it was also regret for what happened in their pasts. See, back within Act 2, Rydell tells Mark something extremely interesting about the creation of his movie. He has the start and the end down, but what he's really struggling with is the middle. Much in that same vein, from the perspective of grief, Mark and Nicole never truly got to see each other's middle. They knew the people that caused each other's grief, the start, and they knew the event that caused the grief to occur in the first place, the end. But they never got to see the middle, the things that happened that caused so much grief in the first place, the reasons why Mark and Nicole carried as much baggage as they did. The reason why Mark and Nicole got to see each other's memories and the memories of the one the other lost was because by seeing them, both Mark and Nicole are able to truly understand each other. They're able to see why they carried so much guilt and grief, blaming themselves for what happened to the person they loved. And by being able to reach this level of understanding, they're able to understand their own grief and process it. And as they watched the other argue with someone they loved and cared for, I believe that although the arguments ended with the phrase, "forgive yourself," I don't believe that's what either Paolo or Kate said at that moment. We can see prior to Mark's argument with his dad that Paolo was insistent on Mark forgiving his mother, telling him that it's been years since she left and holding on to that resentment wasn't good for their family. I believe that without cutting between Kate, Paolo would have told Mark to just forgive her, forgive his mother for leaving, while Kate on the other hand was telling Nicole that she was much more than someone who knew Jake. She was her own person. With her knowing how much Jake's disappearance took up Nicole's life, without Paolo cutting in, I believe Kate would have told Nicole to live for yourself. But the reason why their words were intersecting in the first place was because in that moment, both Mark and Nicole came to the realization that they had to forgive themselves. That they can't keep blaming themselves for what happened because in the end, neither of them knew. As Mark and Nicole walk around the void, they think about what they've done to the world. All of this mess was because of them. Mark yells into the endless nothingness that he was sorry. He knows that he did wrong and he wants to take all of it back. And as Mark falls to his knees, the ground before him begins to glow. And the next thing he knows, he's standing on top of a liquid-like substance. The sky around him being dark with the purple outline of butterflies across it. A large number of white trees were around as well. This is what Mark saw Nicole painting during his vision at the piano. And across the ground, strange bunches of crystals were scattered around. The same crystals that Jessica had painted. The ones she said were meant to be feared. As Mark and Nicole look in awe at their surroundings, they both come across a strange piano. As Nicole begins to play some notes, Mark, despite not being able to see her, hears them. And as they play back and forth, they communicate with one another, realizing that it's the other.
After that, the two begin their final duet together, their eyes welling up with tears as after all this chaos, after everything they saw, they could finally hear each other again. The piece that the two of them were playing together, the otherworldly duet, is a culmination of everything Mark and Nicole have been through together. It's a piece that takes from both memories and time is tearing us apart. Two pieces that were created out of love for another. Two pieces that encapsulate Mark and Nicole's love for the piano, the love for the people they lost, and the love for each other. Someone in the comments of the OST pointed out that Mark plays an upward rhythm, while Nicole plays a downward one. The two rhythms coming together to make up this beautiful piece. Not only does it signify two halves coming together, but it also represents what Mark and Nicole have gone through together as people. Throughout their hundreds of lifetimes, their grief caused them to go through hardships, pain, and struggle. But in the end, they always met, always tried to move forward and try to be better together. It's a piece that shows us the beauty of what love is. It shows us the ups and downs, the good and the bad. We've seen the way love both raised up and hurt both Mark and Nicole. But no matter what happened, no matter their grief, they had each other again. They were together again. After their performance, Mark takes one of the small crystals and tosses it into the water, causing a ripple that Nicole could feel. After sending one back, the two grab larger ones, ready to throw them into the water, thinking back to what Luis said about quantum tsunamis. But as they're ready to throw, they realize that by doing so, they could make things even worse. As they put down the crystals, Nicole and Mark realize that they can't keep doing this. If they keep trying to fix everything, they'll end up ruining things even more. And as Mark cries out that he doesn't know what to do, a small black butterfly falls onto his hand, and suddenly it begins to speak. It tells Mark that he did his best. Mark yells at the butterfly, telling it that everything seems like his fault. No matter what he did, even when he went back and did things differently, nothing really changed. They only seemed to worsen. A black butterfly then flies onto Nicole's hand, telling her that she did her best, that all she ever wanted to do was fix things and to understand. Nicole cries to the butterfly that all she wanted to do was to get through, to understand how Jake felt and why he left. She cries, wishing she had listened more. The butterflies reassure the two that they did their best. They kept trying to understand, and that's what matters. They tell Mark and Nicole that you can only see the world through your own eyes, hear it through your own ears. But each and every time they put their hearts on the line, they persevered through it all time and time again. Mark tells his butterfly that he wishes he could go back to fix everything, telling the butterfly who he believes is his mother that he wishes he could hug her just one more time to say I love you and apologize. But the butterfly tells him that it's not his fault. Nicole tells her butterfly, who she believes is Jake, that she wished she paid better attention, that she asked him how he was doing. But the butterfly tells her that she can't punish herself for not knowing. The two butterflies apologize to Mark and Nicole, blaming themselves for what happened, saying how they should have trusted them and opened up to them too. As the butterflies glow, it's revealed that this entire time, Mark was talking to Jake and Nicole was talking to Maria. The two lost loved ones tell Mark and Nicole that they were the ones who altered the universe because they were afraid. They wanted the person most important in their lives to understand that it wasn't their fault and to continue on living, to live without that guilt hurting them as they move forward. Jake tells Mark that even after changing reality so many times, in every single one, Nicole is still looking for him. Maria tells Nicole that she should have trusted Mark, that he'd be okay after what happened. Remember how in the other two acts, Maria kept telling Mark about the bowl of food he accidentally let spoil? It was her own way of trying to tell Mark that what happened wasn't his fault. Even though he blamed himself for not eating, the only reason he didn't eat was because his mom kept distracting him. In the same instance, Mark's anger at Maria leaving was because he was left in the dark about what happened. He shouldn't blame himself for something she caused. We then learn that the ruling, the great catastrophe that struck the world, was because of them. It was needed in order to get Mark and Nicole to meet,
and without it, Mark and Nicole would have never met. Because of their similar grief, the two spirits believed that if they met and connected, they could help one another get through their grief. Maria used her powers to make it so Paolo got a job overseas too, to make it so that even though both of his parents were gone, Mark would have the finances he needed to live his life peacefully. But without his family, Mark just ended up becoming even more lonely and empty. Remember what Luis said before, God doesn't play dice. Every time Maria and Jake tried to alter something in reality in order to help Mark and Nicole, the universe balanced it out, causing things like Kathy's death, Luis's disappearance, and most of all, making it so Mark and Nicole could never fully let go of what happened, to move on from their grief. I believe the moment they lost control was when Mark and Nicole recognized each other at the start of the third act, with control ending up in their hands, causing them to accidentally cause all of this damage in an attempt to fix things. I believe that each time a loop happened, either Mark or Nicole would end up with more grief and trauma. This grief and trauma would act as those clay balls in the plate of water. They would keep piling up more and more, colliding more and more, with each additional ball making the collisions worse. Remember, before Mark and Nicole would look at each other, Mark would force himself to leave Kathy despite her pleas, and Nicole would apologize to Kate, trying to mend the relationship beforehand. Each time they do it, their grief would get worse and worse. It's why after Mark kept trying to go back to save Kathy, the world collapsed in on itself. Because Mark was too traumatized at watching his best friend die before him over and over. Because of all that's happened, Mark and Nicole realize that they can't go back and fix things, and that obsessing over it will make things worse. That swing from the first part of the game was symbolic of that. Both took turns trying to fix it, but both of them failed, and even though they worked together to fix the swing, that repair didn't last long. Mark tells Jake that they can't go back, not anymore, and Nicole tells Maria that there's only one way forward, and it's right in front of you. As the two spirits thank Mark and Nicole for taking care of the person they love, they turn back into butterflies and fly away. Determined to finally finish things once and for all, Mark and Nicole grab the crystals once more, but this time they aren't throwing them for some scientific solution or reason. They're doing it to show how they finally let go of their grief and guilt that they've been holding on to for so long. They're finally gonna stop trying to fix the past. As they let go, the water rippling around them, they turn to static before reappearing, with them finally being able to see one another. As they embrace, they apologize to one another about how much they tried to fix things. As they hold hands, Mark tells Nicole that she doesn't need to apologize, because he knows she tried her best, with Nicole saying that he did too, telling him that so did his mom. Mark's eyes were filled with tears, telling Nicole that they all did, and they all still do. They tell each other that there's no more going back, with Nicole asking Mark if they'll ever see each other again. With Mark telling her that he hopes they do. They thank each other for the end of the world, for how they believed in one another and every single time they crashed into each other, and the hundreds of lifetimes they spent together. As the black butterflies rest on their shoulders and they say their final goodbyes, in the end, Kathy was right. They were star-crossed lovers, the perfect people for each other whose relationship was never meant to be, at least not now. The greatest act of love that these two could do for one another is to let each other go, to let go of lifetimes of love and connection for the sake of the world, for the sake of moving forward. We're then sent back to the night Mark realized that his mom was gone, the night where he and Rydell went out looking for Kathy. The dreams that Mark, Luis, and Nicole had weren't dreams at all. Instead, they were the reality that was never touched by Maria or Jake. It was the original reality. And as Mark got up from the ground, the only thing that he could think of was saving his best friend. He breaks into a run, passing Rydell as he hurries to the train station, seeing Kathy standing alone, her bag packed as she holds out her hand, feeling the raindrops sliding down her wrist, fully intent on running away and never coming back. As Mark and Rydell finally reach her, Mark pulls her into a hug. He tells her that he wants her here, that they all want her here. He tells Kathy that he has no idea what's going on in her head, but he wants to understand. As Kathy tears up, Mark tells her that he wants to try, as best as he can. He tells Kathy that they'll hurt, they'll be hurt, they'll struggle, and that they'll fail. But no matter what happens, as long as they're there, trying in the present, they'll be okay. He tells Kathy that they're here for her, no matter what. As Kathy breaks down in his arms, she hugs him back, with Rydell coming in with tears in his eyes, and the three friends stand there, locked in each other's arms, knowing in that moment, they'll be okay. Even though Kathy was suffering from abuse, even though Mark lost his mom, they knew that they'd get through it together. Before, Kathy spoke about butterflies and what happens to them in the rain. She told Mark that they do what they can, but they're powerless against such a massive force, to the point where they tatter and even die if they don't find shelter. But in that moment, she found her shelter. The people in her life who cared about her, the people who wanted to be there for her. We then cut to Nicole, who was sent back to the day Kate ripped up her posters of Jake, asking her to either forgive or live for herself. She turns away from the ripped up posters, the photos of her best friend, the person she spent years trying to find, and runs forward, towards Kate, wrapping her arms around her and telling her that she's considering it. And as the two embrace, we see what happens to everybody. We see Louise finally opening up to her mom, with her mom gently reassuring her. We see Kathy and her brother Andrew talking to each other and forming a genuine bond. We see that with the help of Kate, Nicole finally picks up the piano again. We see Louise's struggles in her studying, Rydell's failure to get his short film produced, and Kate trying to pick up guitar. We see that eventually, with people by their side, Rydell got his short film published. We see Ryan and his team ready to play basketball. We see Louise finally get accepted to university, her relationship with Sophia still intact. We see Mark's mother's passing finally be accepted. We see Kathy getting therapy with her brother's support. We see Mark, Kathy, Rydell, Nicole, and Kate all graduating high school. And finally, we see Mark and Nicole, the two of them getting ready for a date, with Kathy telling Mark how hurt she is that he didn't tell her, saying that Mark still had to get her a dress for Rydell's movie premiere, to which Mark says he already did, and something tells me that dress is a butterfly one. Kathy tells Mark that he's already been on 4 failed dates, with Mark telling her that he's got a good feeling about this one. And as Mark and Nicole head to the same cafe, they sit down, with different people. While the man Nicole talks to is unknown, the way the girl twirls her hair in her fingers makes me want to believe that Mark's date is Jessica, the only person who Mark could never truly talk to. I'd like to think that after how much he wanted to understand Kathy, it'd make him interested in trying to befriend and understand Jessica as well, helping avoid her fate from the earlier parts of the game. But despite not being on a date together, the way Nicole looks at Mark while he's on his date, combined with the 2 black butterflies that are watching through the window of the cafe, along with the fact the cafe is called Tadhana or Destiny Cafe, it makes me think that these won't be Mark and Nicole's last dates. And even in the post-credits scene, although Mark talks to his mother's grave, telling her that his date went really well, we have no span of time to go off of between Mark's date with maybe Jessica and when he talks to his mother's grave. But I suppose that's the question at hand. Do Mark and Nicole end up together? In my head, I believe that they do. There are some arguments made that Mark and Nicole don't end up together because without the grief of Maria and Jake to push them forward, they won't be able to connect on the same level. I disagree with that statement because although grief was a factor that brought them together really quickly, it wasn't the entirety of their relationship. They didn't just get along because they shared grief. They still had chemistry, a natural back and forth that helped the relationship move forward. Remember what Nicole said earlier about Kate. Although grief helped them get really close, it wasn't the only important thing about their friendship. Although they have no incentive to meet each other, I feel like when they actually do, they'll finally find the right person. The person they've been waiting for all this time. But for now, they'll continue moving forward until they meet one another. Until then. Now after everything that I've taken you through, what exactly can we say Until Then is about? Well, until then, above all else, is a story about grief. A story about how to process, accept, and finally let go of your grief. And although there's no linear path to how a person grieves, the game uses a 4-part structure similar to the 5 stages of grief within the story. To misunderstand, to understand, to accept, and to let go. Each of these stages are ones that we can see specifically in the game. During the first act of the game, Mark was dead set on learning how to play the piano because of his mother's death. The reason being because he thought when he played it, it'd feel like his mother was still with him. It's why he ended up joining the piano club. Despite picking up enjoyment of the piano on the way, it was still shrouded by his desire to feel like his mom was still with him. In a way, Mark was misunderstanding his grief, thinking that by playing the piano, it would help him avoid it and numb it altogether. He then understands his grief when he's faced with his first major argument with Nicole, the one they had at Jake's old home. It made him understand what grief was doing to both him and the person he loved. He couldn't open up to her about his own pain because he couldn't admit to himself that he was in pain. He accepted his grief after looking through a box containing the news articles of his mother's plane going missing. Scrolling through all the desperate emails he sent her to force himself to wake up and accept that she was gone. And finally, after years of being with Nicole, after getting married and moving out of his old home, Mark finally let go of the grief surrounding his mother's loss. We can see these 4 steps during the final act of the game as well. Mark and Nicole misunderstood the anomalies, believing that by looking at each other and removing the hotspots, it somehow would fix everything. But instead, they made things even worse. They understood by looking at each other's memories, seeing what they had to go through, and seeing the reasons for their pain firsthand. They accepted their grief by stopping themselves from throwing the crystals, realizing that they were just trying to fix everything all over again. They accepted that what happened to their loved ones wasn't their fault. And finally, Mark and Nicole let go. They let go of each other, knowing that in order for things to go back to normal, they'd have to never meet. They knew that in order to truly live their lives, they'd have to stop looking back and focus on what's in front of them. But although I do believe Until Then's message is to let go of your grief and focus on what's in front of you, you might be wondering, how can we really let go? How can we truly move forward in our lives? Well, there's a reason I titled my video the way that I did. It's because that I believe wholeheartedly that Until Then, at the end of the day, is a love story. The best I've ever seen in a video game. It's far from just a love story where a boy meets a girl. There's more to the game than just a romantic love. The game shows us platonic love, familial love, love for your passions, love for your hobbies, love for those you've lost, and most importantly, a love for life. The love that causes you to move forward every single day. In order to have grief in the first place, it must come from a place of great love. It was love that caused Maria to leave overseas, wanting a better life for her son even at the sacrifice of her own dreams. It was love that caused Jake and Maria to take control of reality and try to give the people they loved a life where they could live peacefully without them. Although it was grief that brought Mark and Nicole together, what bloomed from that shared grief was a deep love. A love that spanned hundreds of different timelines. Every single time they crashed into each other. They grew, they laughed, and they cried together over and over again. Because each and every time, they put their hearts on the line to understand one another, to connect, and to love each other. It was love that made Mark try over and over again to save Kathy, to save her from not only her death, but from the torment of her own home. It was love that caused Nicole to try over and over to connect with Kate, realizing that she needed to focus on her relationships in the present instead of the ones in the past. It was love that made Mark want to understand what Kathy was going through, to try his absolute hardest to understand her pain. It's like what she said about the earthquake drill. She ducked and took cover, but now it's finally time to hold on to the people close in your life and get through your problems together. In the end, despite what Mark said, he didn't need to save Kathy. He didn't need to be her hero. He needed to be her friend. He couldn't fix what was going on in her life, but he could be there to try and connect and understand, and in return, she'd try to understand and connect with him. After saying goodbye to Nicole, the reason why Mark was able to move forward after the death of his mother was because he had people close to him, people he could count on, people he could struggle through life with, people who loved him. Until Then shows us that in order for us to connect, to get along, and to love one another, we need to try. We only know what's going on in our own heads. We can't read another person's mind, so the only thing we can do is try. Try to talk to people. Try to understand. Try new things and try at everything we do. We have to try to open up our hearts to another because that's all we can do. The fear of the unknown is a scary thing, but what makes it easier is knowing that we have each other. Every time we make a new friend, talk to another person and make a connection, we as humans are lowering the wall we built around our hearts, letting our emotions sit in the unknown, because in the end, we all want connection. We all want to trust one another, and most importantly, we all want to love people and for people to love us. And it's a hard thing, keeping your love bottled up all the time, so don't be afraid sometimes to express it. Until Then made me realize how important understanding is when it comes to human connection. It helped me stop judging people and instead helped me ask questions. Questions that come from a place of wanting to understand, wanting to learn, and wanting to connect. While Until Then's 4-part structure is used primarily for grief within the game, it can also be used when it comes to your relationships with other people. To misunderstand is when you misinterpret or are confused about what a person is doing and why, whether it be their actions or what they said. Like I was saying earlier, you never know what another person is thinking. No matter how close you are to them, there will be times where you misunderstand. But then that leads to understanding, the moment where we try and figure out what a person is doing and why. Opening our minds and our hearts to understanding, using our words to communicate and learn what they're trying to do. Without that misunderstanding, understanding won't have as big of an impact. We then accept what a person did or said, whether it be something you agree or disagree with. The point is that it happened, and finally, you let go. Let go of whatever happened and continue forward in your life. The bond with the person either strengthened or weakened. What matters is that you're moving forward from it. Continuing on the topic of love, all 4 of the main characters learn an extremely important lesson about it. Luis learned that it's okay to relax and loosen up once in a while, and that it doesn't always hurt to let people in. Kathy learned that it's okay to express your pain and trauma, and that she has friends who can help her through it. Nicole learned to focus on the relationships she has in the present instead of the relationships she lost in the past. And finally, Mark learned how to forgive himself and try to understand. He can't fix things that happened in the past, but now he can show his friends that he's there for them, that they're not alone. None of them are. Before I give my final thoughts on why I chose to make this video, I'd like to read off a speech from the end of the game. A speech that I feel like encapsulates love within Until Then. No matter how much we want to, we'll never truly understand someone else. Not entirely, but that's part of understanding, isn't it? To misunderstand, to writhe, to struggle, to fail, but still, somehow, our desire to understand, to connect, to belong, to forgive, to grieve, to accept. It's gotten us farther than we once thought. We place trust in ourselves, in each other, and in the end, despite everything, we keep trying. We play along. We get along just fine. The world hasn't ended yet. In this crazy, unpredictable world, we'll have moments where we're really hurting, where it feels like the world around us is gonna end. In a way, we're all like butterflies in the rain, trying our best to fly, to stay upright and continue forward, but in the end, There's gonna be something painful that hits us, a powerful, unrelenting force that will knock us down. We can try to fly through it alone, but all that does is leave you tattered. And when that happens, we have to know that we can seek shelter. We have to know when that happens, we have people we can go to, people who are there for you, people you can open up to, and people who can help you as you try to fly through life. People who love you. What makes Until Then such an incredible love story is that it doesn't just show the good things about love, the feelings of warmth and what makes us seek love in the first place. It shows us the bad, the pain, the fear of opening up and misunderstanding, the pain of loss and the pain of grief. But despite this pain, we keep going. We keep moving forward throughout it all. Until Then shows us the entirety of what it means to love. You have to be the one to decide that you're gonna move forward in life and keep running, but you don't have to do it alone. Now, at the start of the video, I said that I was originally planning to make yet another video on this game before I fully finished it. I already had a lot to talk about, but the reason I was waiting, the reason why I was putting off playing this incredible, beautiful game, was because there was someone in my life, someone special to me, that I was playing this with. We were supposed to get through this game together, to experience it all together. But halfway through the second act, I ended up losing them. They aren't dead, but they are no longer in my life, and it hurt. It hurt a lot, because although I didn't see them in a romantic way, I truly did love them. I felt hurt and angry. It made me stop trying to open my heart up to new people and to make new friends. It made me drop Until Then for quite some time. But luckily for me, I still had people. People who helped me through it. People who I spent time with and helped me process my grief. People who I love. And recently, I've met a whole group of new people I can confidently call my friends. They helped me through my grief and I was finally able to finish Until Then. And all I have to say is thank you. Thank you to my friends and my family for their love and support through everything I've gone through in my life. Thank you to Until Then for helping with my growth throughout college. And last of all, thank you, the viewer, for watching until the very end. I want you all to know that the world hasn't ended yet, and to try. Move forward in your life with the people you love. And although there will be times where you have to face things alone, facing things that only you can truly understand, know that you won't be alone forever. Nobody is. Just try. Try to the best of your abilities, because that's all we can do. And even if it fails, just know that you did what you could. You are enough. My name is Kustopia. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.